Shantian's childhood changed the moment his father handed him a necklace with a glowing blue stone. The jewel had belonged to his mother and, according to the man, carried an energy capable of helping him endure even the worst hardships. Right after hugging his son, the father ignored a question about his wife's past and mysteriously vanished into thin air. 10 years flew by. Shantian opened his eyes and found himself staring at a hospital ceiling. His left arm was badly injured, but his mind was completely blank about what had caused such damage. The silence in the room was suddenly interrupted by a nurse named Baiju, who rushed in while checking information on a tablet. The sudden movement startled the young man so badly that he screamed and lost his breath, which also caught the woman off guard. Still panting, he scratched the back of his head and tried to play off the overreaction, blaming it on a bizarre nightmare he had just experienced. Concerned, the nurse stepped closer, told him to remain completely still, and pointed out that his survival went against every medical expectation. Realizing how confused he was, she began explaining the events of that day and how he had risked his own life. The explanation triggered something instantly. Memories crashed into the young man's mind like lightning. He remembered the yellow vehicle speeding toward them and the exact moment he threw himself forward to pull a girl out of the collision path. Once his thoughts cleared up, his only concern was whether the girl he saved was unharmed. At that exact moment, the doorknob turned and the hospital room door slowly creaked open. An imposing woman named Zen Ryu stepped inside carrying a large bouquet of flowers. With an unreadable expression, she informed him that the rescued child was completely safe. The shock of the visit, mixed with the flashes and mental confusion he had been suffering since the accident, left him visibly disoriented and in severe pain. Taking advantage of the situation, the visitor suddenly changed the tone of the conversation. With chilling coldness, she stated that she would not tolerate any form of extortion and wanted to settle this life debt like a business transaction, immediately offering him 1 million. The young man was speechless at the absurdity. Interpreting his silence as a negotiation tactic, the wealthy woman leaned back in her chair arrogantly and doubled the amount to 2 million. That second offer became the final straw. Overflowing with anger, the young man tried ripping out his IVs and jumping off the hospital bed, shouting that he had never risked his life for money, forcing the medical staff to physically restrain him. Unshaken, the visitor played her final card and raised the offer to an absurd 5 million. His response came sharp and direct. Human life is not merchandise. The conviction in his words left the woman completely frozen and speechless. Disgusted by that empty mindset, he turned around and stormed through the hospital hallways. With clenched fists, he mentally cursed the arrogance of the upper class. His rage-filled march, however, came to a stop near the end of the lobby. A small figure dressed in patient pajamas was watching him from afar and timidly asked in a soft voice if he was the hero who had saved her from death. The tension broke with the little girl's gentle laughter as she made sure to thank her hero personally. Uncomfortable with the attention, the young man downplayed his own actions, saying that anyone else would have done the exact same thing in his place. His humble attitude caught the nurse's attention, leaving her genuinely impressed by the patient's character. Breaking the mood, he complimented the woman's beauty, making her blush awkwardly, only to immediately follow it up with an unusual request. He needed to borrow some cash for the bus ride home. The irony hit the nurse hard. The same guy who had rejected a fortune worth 5 million just minutes earlier was now asking for pocket money to get back home, making it painfully obvious he was just a broke student. Amused, she handed him a 100 yuan bill and told him to forget about paying it back. He promised he would return the favor somehow, grabbed the money, and sprinted down the hallway while the rescued girl waved goodbye behind him. His reckless sprint finally ended at the entrance of his apartment building downtown. The young man rushed up the stairs and burst into his apartment, letting out a heavy sigh of relief as the safety of his home washed over him. The silent atmosphere and dark television confirmed that nobody else was there. Without wasting a second, he headed straight to his bedroom and stopped in front of his dresser. Hidden in the back of the drawer rested the old red velvet box. His father's warning echoed in his mind like an alarm. At the very first sign of any physical abnormality, the necklace had to be worn immediately. The moment he opened the case, the blue crystal shined intensely. The time had finally come. Strange things were already happening, and he was fully aware that he had gained the ability to see through solid objects. Without hesitation, he grabbed the necklace and fastened it tightly around his neck. The boy mentally warned his father that the final moment had arrived. Instantly, an explosion of blue light swallowed the entire room, forcing him to shield his eyes. A violent vortex of energy tore through space itself, dragging him into an unknown place. When he finally woke up, disoriented on the floor of another room, he noticed that the crystal in his hands had completely lost its glow. His concern quickly shifted when he felt a tingling sensation around his injuries. Tearing off the bandages in panic, he was left stunned. The damaged skin was peeling away and falling off, revealing that his body was undergoing an absurd and completely unexplained regeneration process. As he struggled to process his own mutation, the sound of a shower shutting off suddenly broke the silence. Seconds later, a girl wrapped in a towel opened the bathroom door and froze in the doorway. Finding a complete stranger inside her home left her completely stunned. To make matters worse, the young man's new visual ability activated on its own, creating an extremely awkward and inappropriate situation. The silence did not last long. Recovering from the shock, Insu was instantly consumed by rage. Stammering in fury, she charged at the intruder, yelling and demanding to know what the hell he was doing there. Getting caught instantly triggered pure chaos. Insu stormed in furious, demanding answers, and landing a violent slap that left a bright red mark across the guy's face. While Shantian closed his eyes to process the blow, his rival, Sheets, completely lost his mind and charged at him from behind with clenched fists. Gradually, the dust settled. Kyuzin, now crossing her arms, considered the matter closed, but Insu kept pressing, demanding to know where Shantian had been for the past 2 days since nobody could reach him. Totally out of it, the young man barely even knew what day it was. That was when Kyuzin revealed he had been missing for the last 48 hours, straight up accusing him of creeping on her privacy. Trying to dodge the blame, Shantian stammered out excuses, but the truth was, Kyuzin's mind was racing. She remembered them bumping into each other in the bathroom, which sparked an intense tension between them. The whole situation became unbearable. Shantian snapped that the girl's cousin was a total freak and, without hesitating, bolted from the place under a barrage of suspicious glares. Frustrated by the breakdown of everything, Kyuzin sought refuge in a nearby, isolated workout area to blow off some steam. The moment he grabbed the pull-up bar, total shock hit. The movements flowed with zero effort. Shantian's strength had spiked drastically because of a mystical crystal, making his reflexes and muscles absolutely relentless. An old-timer resting nearby noticed the guy's insane performance on the bar and walked over, blown away by that unusual physical power, asking if he had a military background. Trying to avoid unnecessary conflict, the young man pointed out that he was only 19 years old, but the elderly man simply laughed and challenged him to a test of strength. Shantian jumped down from the pull-up bar, waving off the idea and refusing to fight someone of that age. To erase any hesitation, the veteran unleashed a lightning-fast kick, sending a heavy stone barrel flying aside as if it weighed nothing. The young man stood there speechless after witnessing such a display of power. Realizing he was facing a true martial arts master, he immediately changed his attitude, respectfully bowed, and accepted the challenge. Shantian made the first move, lunging forward with a punch from his left hand. The old man remained perfectly still, wearing a faint smile, until the exact moment he caught the boy's fist and effortlessly neutralized the attack. The impact sent the young man crashing to his knees. As he recovered from the shock, he realized the damage would have been devastating if not for the crystal's invisible support. Suddenly, the opponent became surrounded by a bluish glow and announced his own offensive move. At that exact moment, the amulet projected a geometric yin-yang matrix covered in hexagrams onto the ground, revealing every single step the master was about to take in advance. With the blueprint for victory laid out in his mind, the young man predicted his opponent's next move. Knowing exactly where to strike, he launched a precise attack that forced the veteran to cancel his own offense and block with the palm of his hand. Shantian gave him no room to recover. Spotting the blind spots in the master's technique, he unleashed a fierce and relentless counterattack, cornering the martial arts expert and forcing him to retreat. The gust of wind created by the young man's punch barely brushed past the master's chin, leaving tension hanging heavily in the air. Grinding his teeth, the veteran found himself both frustrated and fascinated after realizing his opponent had no formal combat training, yet somehow managed to read and exploit every flaw in his technique with surgical precision. Realizing he had completely lost control of the situation, the elderly man called for a truce and leaned on his knees to catch his breath. Deeply impressed by what he had just witnessed, he demanded to know the young man's identity. With complete respect, Shantian gave a formal bow, thanked him for the lesson, and introduced himself. Completely won over by the boy's raw talent, the master pressed his fist into his palm as a gesture of deep respect and invited him to visit his refuge in the forest. The young man returned the gesture with another subtle bow and left with a faint smile, while keeping his guard up regarding this strange and intriguing new alliance. The next morning, life seemed to return to normal. Shantian walked through the school hallways near his home, his mind locked onto the final exams that were less than 2 weeks away. Lost in thought, he nearly bumped into Wenjin. The moment he recognized her, the atmosphere turned awkward. The girl instantly looked uncomfortable, struggling to mutter any kind of response. Recovering her usual confident attitude, she hid the embarrassment and sharply demanded an explanation, claiming that his sudden disappearance for 2 days had everyone worried. Shantian brushed off the concern, walked over to his desk, and mocked the drama to himself, thinking nobody would take their own life over something so trivial. Meanwhile, Wenjin watched him from a distance with a frustrated expression, clearly torn about how to act around him moving forward. The financial gap between them could not have been bigger. Sao's son suddenly burst into the classroom carrying an oversized plate, overflowing with attitude. It was a full French breakfast, warm croissants, sausage, and scrambled eggs. A girl quickly cleared the plate and thanked him. With pure mockery in his voice, Sao's son sneered that he did not expect to see Shantian there and bluntly told him to just go kill himself already. One of the students stepped in, trying to calm things down, only to walk over to Shantian and joke that there was no point studying himself to death if girls still wanted nothing to do with him. The young man's expression darkened. That was when Chili suddenly stepped in front of Sao's son and warned the troublemaker that he was crossing a line. The class, already familiar with her temper, shouted that it was none of her business. The guy laughed it off, claiming Sao's son would never actually do anything. Instantly, 2 of Chili's friends moved to stand beside her. Shantian called out to Chili, trying to stop her from getting involved on his behalf. Clearly annoyed by the whole situation, she cursed under her breath and admitted she hated drama, insisting she only stepped in because they were classmates. The rival fired back, saying all that attitude did not change the fact that she had stepped on his foot. Chili suddenly realized her mistake. Nervously shouting, she waved her hands around, insisting she had only been trying to protect the kid, but Shantian immediately shut her down, telling her to step back and stop spitting on him while she talked. Chili instantly turned red with anger and threatened to make him pay, while her friends swore they would deal with the disrespectful idiots themselves. Right then, the teacher walked in and demanded everyone sit down because a mock exam was about to start. Chili continued glaring daggers at her rival, but before things could settle down, the 3 girls simply turned around and walked out of the classroom. The teacher completely lost it, yelling that class had already started and threatening severe punishment, but Chili did not even blink and ignored the lecture entirely. Shang Tian thought he would finally get a moment of peace during the mock exam, but everything changed the second the teacher placed the test paper on his desk. Out of nowhere, a glowing blue screen appeared in front of his eyes, displaying every answer. Within minutes, he filled everything out, stood up, and handed in the exam. The teacher immediately complained, accusing him of randomly guessing, but the young man insisted he had taken it seriously before walking out of the classroom. Outside, Chili was waiting beneath a tree with her arms crossed and a frustrated look on her face. As soon as class ended, her 2 friends came running over, celebrating that they had passed the test, only to stop in confusion after noticing Shang Tian had been the first one out, assuming he had simply given up and guessed his way through the exam. The calm did not last long. Sao's son showed up moments later with 3 lackeys, surrounding the young man. One of Chili's friends grew nervous, but the hot-headed girl warned that she would only step in if Shang Tian surrendered. Sao's son immediately started mocking him, claiming he would never stand a chance with the beautiful Wen Jin. Completely unfazed, the young man shot back that they could do whatever they wanted with her because he did not care at all. The crowd quickly stirred up drama, shouting that the hero had already lost the battle for the girl. With a flick of his finger, Sao's son gave the signal to attack and rushed forward with the movements of a fan-style martial arts master. But thanks to his new power, Shang Tian analyzed the enemy's strategy in real time. Predicting the attack before it even happened, he flawlessly copied his rival's movements and delivered a brutal punch straight to Sao's son's jaw, launching the rich kid into the air before he could even react. The knockout was immediate. Sao's son collapsed unconscious onto the ground, leaving the entire class, even Chili herself, in total shock. Nobody could believe the school's wealthy golden boy had been defeated so easily. His lackeys panicked the moment they saw their leader lying motionless in the dirt. The biggest one in the group, a bald brute, snapped out of it first. Furious, he charged forward, swearing he would destroy Shang Tian. But the protagonist activated his enhanced visual perception and predicted every single move the gang made. With effortless precision, he dodged the attacks, crushed the first opponent with a brutal elbow strike to the arm, and slammed a devastating punch straight into the giant's solar plexus. In less than 2 minutes, the fight was over. All 4 troublemakers were sprawled across the dirt, groaning in pain. A crowd of students rushed over to see the commotion, completely unable to understand how one of the school's quietest students had wiped the floor with an entire gang. One of Chili's friends, still stunned, asked whether the boy had always known how to fight like that, but Chili stayed silent. Something about the scene awakened something inside her. She had always dreamed of becoming a hero, and now she saw a chance to learn real combat techniques. One of the defeated guys still tried to get back up, muttering that none of this made any sense. Shang Tian ignored the whining and started walking away, but not before leaving the group with one cold warning. They would be wise not to cross paths with him again unless they wanted something much worse next time. As he walked past Chili, the girl swallowed her pride and ran after him, yelling for him to wait. Shang Tian stopped, surprised. Standing in the middle of the dust-filled courtyard, she grabbed his hand and begged him to teach her how to fight. The young man pulled his arm away and stepped back, lying that he knew nothing about martial arts. Unwilling to give up, Chili grabbed his hand again, shouting that she had seen everything and demanding he teach her his techniques. Worried, the protagonist took another step back, fully aware he could never reveal the truth. He had only won because he had perfectly copied his opponent's movements. Jealousy spread like wildfire among the students. Shang Tian had not only crushed the gang, but somehow also earned the attention of the school's most desired girl. Far away, inside a luxurious mansion, the influential Fan was preparing for a meal when his secretary arrived carrying a complete report. The documents revealed that the protagonist was an orphan and had turned down a massive cash reward after saving a young girl. While sipping his tea, Fan discovered that the boy's family history was protected by military-grade encryption that could not be cracked. It became painfully clear that this student was far from ordinary. Sensing trouble ahead, Fan asked for an update on the movements of the Shifting Sands, a rival organization. Since he would soon be traveling, he ordered his agents to provide undercover protection and eliminate anyone who posed a threat to Shang Tian, even if the boy noticed he was being watched. Meanwhile, at the top of a skyscraper, the leaders of that enemy faction, under the command of the dangerous Bat Lord, were planning their next moves. One of Fan's operatives, secretly infiltrated among them with the eyes of a predator, mentally reinforced the mission: eliminate the rivals and protect the boy before vanishing into the night like a shadow. Completely unaware of this silent war unfolding around him, Shang Tian wandered through the shopping districts with Chili practically glued to his side. Annoyed by the delay, she kept demanding to know when their martial arts lessons would finally begin. Hoping to dodge the subject and shake her off, the young man casually claimed that his techniques were a family secret, reserved only for his future wife and children. Chili instantly froze in embarrassment, but determination quickly took over, and she boldly asked to be accepted right then and there. The young man immediately refused, saying he had no intention of making that kind of commitment. That was when the fiery girl finally connected the dots. Realizing the requirement for training was marriage, she immediately blurted out whether he was proposing to her. Her intense and completely unfiltered reaction left Shang Tian nervous and visibly shaken. Chili widened her eyes in total shock. Without holding back, Shang Tian bluntly admitted that he had absolutely no interest in girls who were plain and lacked curves before turning around and walking off. Even hurt by the comment, Chili swallowed her pride and ran after him anyway. Their route suddenly changed after they passed a lottery vendor. The young man insisted it was a waste of time, but Chili dragged him over to try their luck. Annoyed, he adjusted his collar and questioned why a wealthy girl would even care about gambling. She casually explained it was for fun, not money, before excitedly rushing toward the prize counter. Nearby, a customer was scratching a yellow lottery ticket and immediately mocked Chili when she asked for a few games, claiming kids knew nothing about gambling and only wasted money. Furious, the girl was already about to charge at him while yelling, but froze in surprise when Shang Tian stepped in front of her and blocked the man's approach. The protagonist calmed things down by suggesting they all play. The stranger accepted the challenge and proudly showed off a winning ticket worth 100 coins. But Shang Tian activated his special vision, scanned the pile of scratch cards, and carefully picked one that held an 800 prize. The man kept mocking him, fully convinced the boy would embarrass himself in the next round. Ignoring the vendor's warnings, Shang Tian pocketed 700 from the prize money and reinvested the rest into more tickets. His rival smirked, waiting for him to fail, but the protagonist's power was flawless. Scratching the new cards, he hit the grand prize of 2,000. The mocking laughter from the customer and even the employees quickly turned into stunned silence before Shang Tian and Chili quietly collected the winnings and walked away. Chili became completely excited over how easy the money had come and immediately said she wanted to learn his lottery trick. Shang Tian, meanwhile, was busy testing out his new phone and reminded her that her real goal had supposedly been martial arts training. Moments later, he called his cousin to share his new number and arranged to meet up later that day. The moment he spotted a yellow taxi, the protagonist waved it down without hesitation. Chili immediately realized he was trying to ditch her and demanded to know where he was going, but the young man ignored the question, climbed into the cab, and told her to stop following him. The taxi pulled away, leaving the girl yelling alone on the sidewalk. His final destination was the Antique District, a street packed with old relics and crowded market stalls. Walking through the area, Shang Tian remembered he still needed to find a decent birthday gift for a party happening later that night. While browsing, a famous antique appraiser suddenly arrived, surrounded by 4 bodyguards and treated like royalty by every merchant on the street. Shang Tian paid the wealthy man no attention. Instead, he used his enhanced vision to filter through countless fakes until something genuinely valuable finally caught his eye. The young man rushed toward the item so quickly that he nearly crashed into the veteran appraiser, forcing the man to step aside at the last second. The bodyguards immediately moved in, throwing insults and threats over the disrespect. Completely unfazed, Shang Tian ignored the intimidation and directly asked the street vendor about the glowing green jade stone sitting on display. The merchant asked for 8,000 for the small jade disc, but Shang Tian casually spun it in his hand and played the classic broke student excuse. The vendor quickly panicked after noticing the respected appraiser was watching nearby, afraid his scam might be exposed on the spot. Sensing the tension, the protagonist leaned closer and quietly whispered that he already knew the item was fake and not even worth 2,000. Trying to save face in front of the expert, the merchant loudly announced that the lowest price possible would be 5,000. Shang Tian agreed to the deal but insisted on taking several seemingly worthless stones decorating the stand as part of the purchase. Thinking he had just hit the jackpot by selling cheap glass for 5,000, the vendor hurriedly wrapped everything up. Watching from afar, the veteran appraiser mocked the young man's stupidity, sarcastically commenting that he had just wasted a fortune on a worthless imitation. Without saying a word, Shang Tian casually tossed the jade disc into the air. The object crashed onto the ground and shattered instantly, revealing nothing but ordinary glass. The appraiser's face turned pale on the spot. Shock completely overtook him after realizing the student was not some gullible fool but someone with an almost surgical eye for deception. Swallowing his pride, the expert praised the boy's rare talent for identifying antiques. What he still failed to understand, however, was Shang Tian's real objective. The broken disc had never mattered. His true target had been a plain yellow pebble hidden among the worthless stones, an authentic ancient relic carrying mystical powers capable of healing illness and eliminating health problems. Recognizing the boy's talent, Master Sui suddenly remembered old legends about a famous monk. He needed someone with that level of skill to recover his family's ancient artifacts, which had ended up under his nephew's control. Determined to recruit the young man as an ally for the mission, the appraiser blocked Shang Tian's path and proposed a test. Before long, a crowd gathered around the street, eager to witness the confrontation. The conditions of the bet were extreme. The protagonist demanded that if he won, he would be allowed to claim whatever prize he wanted. If he lost, he would forfeit his own life. Thinking the proposal was far too reckless, Sui adjusted the terms and instead demanded that the young man become his loyal servant if he failed. Completely confident in his victory, Shang Tian accepted the deal without hesitation. A table was set up right on the sidewalk, covered with various relics, including a Chinese necklace, a blue gemstone, a saucer, and an ancient urn. The crowd thought the boy had completely lost his mind when he declared that he would give up everything if he made even a single mistake during the appraisal. Without wasting time, Shang Tian pointed to a small brown chest decorated with floral patterns and confidently declared it authentic. Su had no choice but to swallow his pride and confirm that the piece was genuine and had once belonged to Empress Chishi. To finish the performance and prove his accuracy, the young man asked for permission to smash every fake item on the table. Convinced the boy would embarrass himself and be forced to pay for the damages, the appraiser agreed. Completely unfazed, Shang Tian tossed the paperwork aside and prepared to destroy the counterfeits. The moment the Chinese urn shattered against the pavement, the crowd collectively held its breath, since everyone had been convinced it was authentic. Ignoring the shock around him, Shang Tian crouched down and picked up one of the broken fragments. Turning it toward the audience, he revealed a red industrial stamp hidden on the back. It was the mark of a modern factory, causing the crowd to erupt into applause at the discovery. Pale and visibly shaken, Master Sui demanded to know how the boy had spotted the fake. Wearing a confident smile, the young man simply replied that his vision was trained to notice every flaw. To settle the competition once and for all, he picked up a decorated blue saucer from the table, declared it another counterfeit, and smashed it into pieces as well. With no way to argue anymore, the veteran appraiser reluctantly accepted defeat. As his prize for winning, Shang Tian chose a jade bracelet resting on the table. Sui looked confused by the choice, since the accessory appeared cheap and unremarkable. That was when the protagonist revealed his true plan. He bit his own finger and let several drops of blood fall onto the stone. Instantly, the bracelet absorbed the blood, turning into a vibrant crimson shade and glowing intensely. The crowd immediately stepped back in shock after realizing it was an incredibly rare blood jade artifact. One man in the audience panicked and instantly offered 2 million coins for the item, but the young man proudly refused, making it clear that the treasure was not for sale. Even Master Sui was left speechless after realizing an artifact of that magnitude had slipped right past his own eyes. Watching the boy walk away through the old market street, the experienced appraiser set his pride aside, stopped him, and formally offered his friendship and respect. Fully aware of the value of having someone as powerful and influential as Sui as an ally, Shang Tian smiled and immediately accepted the partnership. Just as the master tried to learn the prodigy's name, a black luxury Lexus suddenly pulled up beside them. A tall man dressed entirely in black stepped out of the vehicle, showing off piercings on his ears and nose along with a striking tattoo beneath his left eye. He was heavily guarded. The reason for their arrival was simple. The wealthy Saot's son, whom Shang Tian had beaten earlier that day, had ended up in the hospital. Humiliated and consumed by rage, the spoiled rich kid had locked himself inside the clinic bathroom and refused to come out. Outside the door, his powerful father, Sawa, stood waiting alongside security while pressuring Dr. Li for answers. The doctor washed his hands of the matter, explaining that the initial tests had found no drugs or suspicious substances in the patient's system. He had simply suffered an overwhelming beating. In response, the furious father ordered his trusted enforcer, Asen, to locate the attacker immediately. Back on the street, Asen aggressively pointed his finger and demanded that Shang Tian come with them without resistance. Completely calm, the protagonist stood his ground and challenged the thug, asking who exactly he thought he was to be giving orders. Sensing the danger, Master Sui stepped in immediately and told the young man to watch his mouth, revealing that the intimidating figure was Sawa's personal bodyguard and his own relative. Asen mocked the veteran, promising not to hurt the old man as long as he stayed out of the situation. Shang Tian was surprised to learn about the family connection between the master and the rival elite, but nobody backed down. In an unexpected turn, Master Sui took the boy's side, firmly declaring that nobody would lay a hand on his new ally while he was present. Instantly, the elder's bodyguards moved in and surrounded the area, ready for a fight, while Asen simply let out a mocking laugh, clearly underestimating the resistance. To Asen, Master Sui's 4 guards were nothing more than an inconvenience. Without wasting a second, he activated his technique, the Crimson Whirlwind, unleashing an invisible force that sent every defender crashing to the ground at once. Master Sui exploded in anger, accusing the brute of acting above the law simply because of Sawa's influence. Completely indifferent to the old man's outrage, Asen only smirked and ordered his men to throw Shang Tian into the car. 2 guards rushed in to grab the protagonist, but he remained calm, carefully tracking every move his enemies made. The instant they reached for him, the young man dodged with precision, grabbed both men firmly by the shoulders, and hurled them in opposite directions with shocking strength. Landing smoothly after a quick leap, Shang Tian made it clear he had no intention of surrendering without a fight. The boy's quick reaction stunned Master Sui, and even impressed Asen, who had not expected such strength from a student. Trying to intimidate the thug leader, Shang Tian stared him down and asked whether he was truly prepared to test that power. Asen stepped forward, acknowledging the boy's potential while mocking his lack of real combat experience. Tired of the pointless talking, the protagonist stretched out his hand and bluntly told his opponent to stop talking and fight already. The bodyguard casually adjusted his hair with a cynical grin, warning that whatever happened next would be entirely the young man's fault, because he had no intention of showing mercy. Shang Tian braced himself for a difficult and completely unfair battle, fully aware that the danger this time was real. But just before the first punch could be thrown, the confrontation was suddenly interrupted. A sinister presence suddenly appeared behind them. A group of masked men dressed in gray suits decorated with flame patterns surrounded the area. The moment a mocking voice echoed from behind, Asin turned around in alarm and instinctively stepped back after recognizing the feared organization known as the Shifting Sands. The faction leader wasted no time. He bluntly ordered Asin to leave, declaring that the boy was now their concern. Sawa's enforcer tried arguing that he also had orders to bring the young man back, but he was immediately cut off, realizing that challenging a clan of professional assassins would be nothing short of a death sentence. Asin swallowed his pride, acted indifferent, and backed off, abandoning the target as tension spread through the air. Shang Tian initially thought he had been saved, but the relief did not last long. 3 men in gray stepped forward with clenched fists, surrounding him. Sensing real danger, the protagonist instinctively stepped back and demanded to know who they were. The leader quickly revealed their true objective. They wanted the secret relic left behind by the boy's father. Completely caught off guard, Shang Tian insisted he had never known about any inheritance. The man clarified that they were searching for an ancient scroll and gave him exactly 1 week to hand it over. Otherwise, he would suffer a slow and painful death. Without another word, the group vanished. Master Sui approached with concern, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder and asking what such a dangerous organization could possibly want with him. Trying to keep up appearances and avoid alarming his new ally, Shang Tian laughed awkwardly and brushed it off, pretending the criminals had obviously mistaken him for someone else. Meanwhile, the setting completely shifted to a luxury restaurant where high society had gathered to celebrate Insu's birthday. Between glasses of red wine and warm congratulations, the birthday girl smiled politely and thanked her guests. The mood of the party shifted the moment a man entered the hall carrying a massive bouquet of blue roses, directing his attention toward the nanny, Lena, who was present at the event. The crowd immediately parted as the blonde suitor, famous for his looks, walked into the venue carrying the extravagant bouquet, determined to impress the birthday girl. Insu forced a polite smile, though internally she was annoyed, because the one person she had actually been waiting for still had not arrived. Before the young man could make his move, a tall woman dressed in dark clothing with golden accents casually walked past him. Apologizing for arriving late, she handed the birthday girl an extravagant gift, a luxurious dress paired with sparkling gold earrings. Guests immediately began whispering in shock over the expensive present, questioning whether Nan Lin had anything better to offer. Trying to regain control and convinced his surprise would overshadow every other man there, Nan Lin suddenly dropped to one knee. Extending the bouquet, he revealed an open jewelry box containing a valuable gold ring. Insu froze in disgust, having absolutely no interest in marrying such an arrogant man. As guests pressured her to accept and the suitor smiled victoriously, the restaurant doors suddenly opened. Shang Tian stepped inside wearing simple, ordinary clothes and apologized for being late. Insu immediately breathed a sigh of relief after escaping the proposal. She rushed over, tightly grabbed his arm, and loudly announced to everyone that Shang Tian was her boyfriend. Nan Lin stared at the newcomer in complete disbelief, sizing him up from head to toe. Noticing the modest clothes and assuming the guy did not even own a car, the blonde openly mocked him, ridiculing the fact that his rival had shown up empty-handed without even bringing a gift. Insu quickly defended Shang Tian, insisting she did not need luxury to be with someone she loved. But the young man suddenly broke the tension by pretending to look surprised and asking whether she really thought he would arrive empty-handed. With a smooth motion, Shang Tian raised the blood-red jade bracelet in front of everyone, proudly declaring it to be his special gift. He deliberately mocked his blonde rival, saying that a rare treasure of that level could never be found in some ordinary little shop. Nan Lin gritted his teeth, swallowing his anger, while Insu stood there in total shock, quietly asking where he had gotten enough money to buy something like that. Shang Tian simply told her to trust him and confidently announced to the entire room that this was only the beginning. He guided the birthday girl toward the venue's large double doors. Confused by his strategy, she hesitated, pointing out that there was nothing beyond them, but the protagonist simply smiled and motioned for her to open them. The moment the doors swung open, the spectacle began. A massive shower of red rose petals cascaded from the high ceiling, covering the ground in a breathtaking display. Lined up along the hallway, more than 10 men dressed in flawless black suits began applauding enthusiastically while congratulating the young woman. Shang Tian casually explained that since the main hall felt too crowded, he had decided to extend the celebration outside. To top it all off, he pointed toward the giant glass window. Across the street, the illuminated windows of a massive skyscraper formed a glowing declaration of love. Completely overwhelmed, Insu felt her heart race as her face burned bright red with embarrassment. Watching all the effort he had gone through, she suddenly found herself wishing Shang Tian was not merely pretending to be her boyfriend. her cheeks glowing from pure emotion. In reality, the entire grand production had been orchestrated by Shang Tian's master, who was secretly enjoying the situation from afar. Meanwhile, Nan Lin watched everything unfold while practically boiling with jealousy. Soon after, the group climbed into a silver BMW, the engine roaring loudly as the car sped through the city streets. Inside the vehicle, Insu finally broke the silence to thank him for the gift, admitting how deeply touched she had been by the jade bracelet. Shang Tian simply smiled and brushed it off, casually claiming he had stumbled across the piece by pure luck in an alley full of old junk, never revealing that the birthday girl had absolutely no idea of the blood jade's true value. The calm atmosphere changed instantly when a gray van with completely tinted windows sped past them. The suspicious behavior and nervous driving immediately caught the protagonist's attention. Without hesitation, Shang Tian activated his special X-ray vision and looked straight through the vehicle's metal frame, spotting a woman and a child locked inside the cargo compartment. Wasting no time, Shang Tian tailed the van to begin a discreet pursuit. Insu was startled by the sudden maneuver, but the young man acted fast. He ordered the girls to stay somewhere safe and call the police immediately, confirming that businesswoman Jen Ryu and her daughter were being kidnapped inside the vehicle. The kidnapper followed the route without realizing he was being tracked and, minutes later, pulled up in front of an abandoned warehouse with rusted metal doors. The moment the van doors opened, the criminals forced the captives out and dragged them inside. Completely terrified, Jen Ryu was violently shoved by one of the thugs and lost her balance. Jen Ryu hit the floor hard and immediately shouted that she already knew who was behind everything. Someone wanted to steal her company shares. The bald gang leader laughed at her panic and casually explained that the plan was simple. One of the thugs began dragging the little girl away by force. Jen Ryu desperately tried to run after her, but was grabbed from behind by her shirt. Completely cornered, she broke down in tears and begged for help. Suddenly, Shang Tian's silhouette appeared at the warehouse entrance, illuminated by the moonlight. The young man bluntly ordered them to cut the nonsense and warned that the police were already on the way. Furious, the thugs released the woman and charged straight at him, but the protagonist had one major advantage. He could predict every movement they made. Effortlessly dodging every punch, he countered with brutal strikes and left all three attackers sprawled across the dusty floor. The bald leader clenched his teeth in rage as he watched everything collapse because of one intruder. Pulling out a gun, he pointed it directly at Shang Tian's chest and declared that he would not leave alive. Jen Ryu watched in horror, fully aware they would be next if he failed. The villain pulled the trigger, the bullet tearing straight into the young man's stomach. Unable to react, Shang Tian collapsed onto the floor as blood quickly spread across his shirt. The businesswoman screamed in terror, but the bald man only laughed mockingly, claiming the kid had died because he was stupid. With the young man motionless on the ground, the criminal coldly walked toward Jen Ryu to finish the job. The criminal celebrated too early. Despite the gunshot wound, Shang Tian slowly began pushing himself back up. In the split second the thug tried to handle the weapon again, the protagonist ignored the unbearable pain, launched himself forward, and slammed into the man's shoulder with full force. The surprise impact hit hard enough to send the giant crashing backward onto the floor. Desperate and crying uncontrollably, Jen Ryu screamed in fear for the young man's life. His condition was critical, blood poured from the wound, forcing him to press his hand against it just to stay conscious. Without wasting another second, he moved toward the exit and warned the woman that they needed to disappear immediately. Along the way, Jen Ryu desperately insisted on calling an ambulance because of the severity of the gunshot wound, but Shang Tian instantly refused any hospital treatment and instead guided them to his house, an isolated residence surrounded by worn brick walls. Once inside, the young man ripped off his blood-soaked shirt, tossed it aside, and spread a basic first aid kit across the table. Using scissors and medical supplies, they carefully began the tense process of removing the bullet. Jen Ryu cleaned the blood and wrapped bandages around his torso before asking why he refused medical treatment. Staring silently at the ceiling, Shang Tian simply closed his eyes, unable to reveal the truth. His body was undergoing biological mutations, and doctors would never let him leave if they discovered it. Taking advantage of the fact that exhaustion had finally knocked him unconscious, Jen Ryu suddenly noticed a strange beam of light shining from inside his pocket. Curious, she pulled out the yellow stone he carried. The crystal instantly heated up so violently in her hand that she cried out in pain and dropped it. By pure chance, the burning stone landed directly on top of Shang Tian's gunshot wound, releasing a blinding glow and triggering what looked like an impossible medical miracle right before her eyes. The blood beneath the bandages disappeared almost instantly. Completely stunned, Jen Ryu removed the wrappings and stood there speechless after discovering the fatal wound had vanished entirely, without leaving behind even the faintest scar. She touched the young man's skin in disbelief, unable to process the miracle performed by the mysterious stone. At that moment, her little daughter woke up, entered the room with worry written all over her face, and asked how the young man was doing. The businesswoman gently patted the girl's head and reassured her that everything would be okay. A wave of intense light forced Shang Tian to open his eyes. As consciousness returned, he felt an overwhelming surge of energy coursing through his veins, as though he had reached some kind of divine awakening. Turning his head, he saw Jen Ryu kneeling beside the couch where he had been resting. The yellow crystal sat nearby, while his abdomen looked completely untouched. Staring at the golden gem in shock, he struggled to understand the true magnitude of its power. The young man stood up and slipped on a clean white shirt, absent-mindedly touching the exact spot where the bullet had hit him. Even the sound of the buttons clicking together could not distract him from the fact that there was absolutely no trace of the injury left. He found himself reflecting on the bizarre turn his life had taken recently, remembering that this entire impossible journey had begun the day he discovered a mysterious blue crystal. But the moment of peace quickly faded, replaced by irritation as he remembered that professional assassins were now hunting him down. Right on cue, the same 3 Shifting Sands thugs suddenly stepped through the front door and cornered him. Their leader, visibly irritated, complained that the boy had not even bothered searching for the relic and delivered a final ultimatum: hand over the scroll immediately, or say goodbye to his life. Scratching his head in genuine frustration, Shang Tian bluntly admitted that he had absolutely no idea what document they were talking about or where he was even supposed to start looking. The gang leader narrowed his eyes, fully convinced the young man was simply playing dumb and acting clever to challenge the organization. Shang Tian immediately realized the situation had turned dangerous. Although his X-ray vision helped him read and predict his opponent's movements, these men were highly trained elite warriors. To make matters worse, he expanded his vision beyond the walls of the house and detected an ambush. Hidden on a thick tree branch in the backyard, a dangerous silver-clad swordsman waited in complete silence. Without wasting another second on discussion, the assassins charged forward, with their leader sprinting straight at the protagonist. The enemy feinted to the left before throwing a sharp right hook, a complete miss. Shang Tian had already predicted the movement and calmly tilted his head aside with perfect composure. He already knew the leader's next sequence: retreat, flip backward, then launch a downward kick aimed straight at his head. Activating his X-ray vision to fully focus on the target, Shang Tian prepared himself for the strike. The moment the attack came, the young man blocked the impact with the palm of his hand, locked onto his opponent's wrist, and hurled him with raw strength straight into the fence. After a quick acrobatic recovery, Shang Tian landed on one knee. The moment he recognized the rival wearing F. Chao Feng's tactical gear, he realized the threat level was far higher than expected. Without hesitation, the assassin rushed in for another attack. Pressed by the intensity of the fight, the killer briefly considered retreating toward the village hidden in the forest. But those plans were interrupted when a massive teapot suddenly came flying through the air. The villain quickly dodged to the side as the object shot past him. Shang Tian stood there confused by the flying kitchenware until he noticed Zen Ryu standing behind him, armed with a clothing iron and loudly demanding that the criminals leave immediately. The young man quickly warned her that the area was dangerous and ordered her to go back inside, but she refused, insisting she would not abandon him after he had saved her daughter's life. Shang Tian could only let out a tired sigh. Even though he had disliked her from the moment they first met, the woman's courage changed the situation. Feeling unexpectedly proud, he decided he would not retreat, he would fight. The villain's leader, however, completely lost his patience. Irritated by what looked like flirting in the middle of a battle, the leader ordered 3 of his men to eliminate the woman without effort. That was when everything changed. A mysterious warrior suddenly dropped from the sky directly in front of them. The criminals froze instantly at the sight of the swordsman. The leader panicked the moment he recognized the man's identity. It was the legendary Haiyan Yuan Honorable. The warrior moved his blade with incredible speed, targeting each assassin in an instant. That sword was unmistakable. In the blink of an eye, 2 assassins dropped dead. Terrified by the overwhelming strength of the master, who had interrupted the fight, the enemy leader grabbed his allies' bodies and fled as fast as possible. Without even looking back, Yan Honorable casually muttered a comment dripping with contempt. The swordsman walked toward the young man and asked if he was Shang Tian. Still stunned, the boy confirmed it, barely able to process what had happened since even his enhanced vision had struggled to follow the man's speed. Keeping his eyes closed, Yan Honorable quietly murmured to himself that the boy had inherited the same recklessness and appearance as his father. The moment the conversation shifted toward his father, Shang Tian immediately asked whether the master had known him. The response came as an order. He needed to break the blue crystal hanging from his necklace. Frustrated by the demand to destroy what he believed was his mother's keepsake, the young man questioned the request. Yan Honorable calmly explained that the necklace had actually been crafted by the boy's father to hide the real secret sealed inside. Choosing to trust the man who had just saved him, Shang Tian used all his strength to crush the stone. The pendant shattered completely. Seeing nothing but useless fragments scattered around, the young man froze in shock. A nearly invisible smile appeared on the swordsman's face. After brushing aside the shattered crystal, Shang Tian discovered a perfectly preserved brown scroll hidden inside. Suddenly, everything made sense. The true target of the enemies had been the Phantom Sands. Yan Honorable explained that his father had invented the story about the maternal relic only to keep him far away from this kind of dangerous conflict. Overwhelmed by the revelations, the young man demanded to know who his father truly was. The swordsman frowned slightly and explained that the deceased man had only wanted his son to live a peaceful life, though he reassured him that his father had been a truly great man. Clenching his fists tightly, Shang Tian asked whether he believed his father had really get of the Morma. An Honorable calmly interrupted, explaining that peace was still possible and finally revealing his true intention. He wanted to take the young man in as his disciple. Shang Tian accepted immediately, bowing deeply out of genuine respect for the master. Before leaving, the veteran reminded him that entrance exams were quickly approaching and warned that brutal training would begin as soon as the current situation was resolved. Yan Honorable then departed. Zen Ryu rushed over to help the young man back to his feet, already imagining the terrifying potential he possessed. Combining the master's guidance with his special vision would make him an unstoppable force. The following day, Shang Tian returned to the reality of school life. With so much chaos happening recently, he had nearly forgotten about studying. The moment he stepped onto campus, Chile rushed over demanding answers about the race. Shang Tian shut down the conversation immediately and asked not to be bothered, fully focused on improving his own abilities. Frustrated, Chile clenched his fists and declared that he would personally train the protagonist himself. Shang Tian simply covered his ears to ignore the noise. Crossing his arms with a challenging expression, Chile suddenly asked what kind of woman the young man was attracted to. The answer came fast and brutally honest. Whoever he chose just could not dress like a clown. Chile instantly turned bright red with embarrassment. The other girls rushed over to comfort him while secretly trying not to laugh. Trying to recover from the humiliation, Chile turned to his friends and insisted the problem was only the wardrobe, demanding help to completely change his style, leaving everyone around shocked by the reaction. After classes, Shang Tian headed to the cafe where Insu had promised to wait for him. Inside, Kusina enthusiastically waved from a table where she sat drinking coffee with her girlfriend. The young man walked over and took a seat directly across from Insu, immediately attracting curious glances from the girls nearby. Kusina casually mentioned that, despite being terrified of Shang Tian, the professor had done him a huge favor the previous day and suggested they should probably call to thank him. Shang Tian laughed and replied that he had already spoken with the man, conveniently leaving out the detail that the teacher had quietly sounded him out about a possible job opportunity later on. Taking a sip through his straw, Shang Tian reflected on how influential Master Sui really was and decided it would be smart to keep that alliance close. Out of nowhere, the girl beside him turned bright red, awkwardly pulled out a drink, and loudly announced to the entire cafe that the soda belonged to him. After a rushed apology, the mood at the table shifted. Insu exchanged glances with Kusina and, visibly embarrassed, asked Shang Tian for a favor. Assuming this had somehow turned into flirting involving her cousin, the girlfriend lowered her head, blushing furiously from embarrassment. Insu got straight to the point. The arts department had a basketball game that same day, and she needed him to play for their team. Shang Tian looked completely stunned. He had absolutely zero experience with basketball. Before he could properly react, the conversation was interrupted when a group entered the cafe, and someone casually rested a hand on his shoulder. It was the rival team. One of the newcomers immediately mocked the situation, pointing out that Insu must have been truly desperate if she was recruiting outside help. Beside her stood a guy spinning a basketball on his finger with complete arrogance. The unfamiliar girl kept throwing jabs, claiming the arts department was pathetic when it came to recruiting talent. Insu burned with frustration, barely able to respond. Taking advantage of the opening, Shang Tian shamelessly looked the provocateur up and down before sarcastically offering to marry her. The joke instantly set the rival off. She exploded in anger, though she quickly tried to recover her arrogant composure, warning Insu that recruiting amateurs only made their inevitable defeat even more obvious. Completely fed up with the humiliation, Insu slammed her hand onto the table and declared a bet. Whoever lost the game would have to call the winner Big Sister every time they met in the future. The rival accepted immediately, flashing a smug smile. While tension thickened between the two girls, Shang Tian casually took another sip of the soda, causing Insu to blush again after realizing he was still drinking from her cup. Amused by the competitive energy, the young man decided to join the chaos and asked whether he could place a bet with the rival team as well. The unfamiliar girl stared at him in surprise and demanded to know the conditions. Shang Tian had absolutely no shame. If he won, she would have to greet him as great husband every time they ran into each other. The rival completely lost her temper and threw a furious kick straight at him. With quick reflexes and complete calm, Shang Tian dodged the attack and caught the girl's leg midair, gripping her ankle firmly. The whole scene only made Insu angrier, and out of pure frustration, she punched her cousin directly in the cheek. Even while furious and visibly flustered, the rival laid out her final condition. If Shang Tian lost the basketball game, he would have to run completely naked across the school grounds. Keeping her arrogant attitude intact, the rival called for her teammates and marched out of the cafe. The second they disappeared from sight, Insu unleashed her frustration on Shang Tian with a barrage of punches, making it crystal clear that the girl was her sworn enemy. The young man barely managed to shield his head from the assault. At the agreed time, everyone gathered at the basketball court. Noticing the missing players, Shang Tian sarcastically asked whether he was expected to carry the entire team on his back. Insu told him to relax and wait. Shortly afterward, two students from different departments, Upan and Yui, arrived to complete the arts team roster. The bleachers quickly filled up. The noise became deafening as dozens of hysterical girls screamed the opposing team star's name. Insu immediately froze after realizing exactly who they were about to face. Across the court, the blonde, narcissistic idol of the crowd was literally being dragged by the ear by his own captain, who had clearly run out of patience with the guy's ego. Shang Tian sighed after noticing that not a single person in the crowd was cheering for the arts department. Trying to lighten the mood, Insu confidently declared that they would act as the team's cheer squad themselves. But then something unbelievably bizarre happened. The girl's clothes suddenly turned transparent. The visual shock hit instantly, leaving Shang Tian with an immediate nosebleed while the horrified girl desperately tried to cover her skirt. The teams took their positions. Upan's opening strategy was simple: focus entirely on stealing the opposing team's ball possession. For now, Shang Tian decided not to interfere and instead observe how the game flowed. The whistle blew. Within seconds, the crowd's idol sprinted across the court, leaped into the air, and slammed the ball through the hoop with effortless ease. The bleachers erupted into screams and cheers. Watching the speed and power behind the move, Shang Tian immediately understood the message. This opponent was the real deal, and winning would require far more effort than expected. The ball moved to Upan, but pressure came instantly. The rival team's star rushed straight at him while defenders cut off every passing lane. With no obvious option available, Upan completely froze. On the other side, Yui had a better read on the game. Seeing the play collapse, he rushed over to provide support, though he silently prayed not to receive the ball in the middle of that chaos, afraid he would immediately lose possession. Wide open on the court, Shang Tian frantically waved from behind the defenders, signaling for the pass. Upan saw him, but hesitation froze him in place. That single moment of doubt came at a heavy price. Before Upan could even react, the basketball star made his move, effortlessly stealing the ball right out of his hands and scoring yet another point. Upan froze in place. Shang Tian could not even hide his disbelief at the play. All the guy had to do was pass the ball immediately. The first half ended in complete disaster. The rival team had built a crushing 40-0 lead. Humiliated by the score, Upan completely lost his temper. He loudly complained that it was impossible to play alongside amateurs and declared that he was quitting the match since the scoreboard was already beyond saving. The other students tried defending themselves, arguing that they had wanted to play, but the ball had never even reached them. Upan brushed them off, coldly telling them to play however they wanted. With the team now short-handed, Insu's friend panicked and asked what they were supposed to do without enough players to continue the tournament. That was when Upan casually took a sip from his water bottle and flashed a smug grin. In a tone dripping with blackmail, he said he might reconsider quitting if the two pretty girls begged for his help. Shang Tian immediately took control of the situation. Walking over to the bench, he called on two visibly shy students from the arts department to complete the lineup. With pure sarcasm, he informed Upan that he would fix the game himself since the professionals had been completely useless. Furious, Upan declared that a comeback was impossible and boldly bet that he would bark like a dog if the amateur team somehow managed to win. The buzzer sounded, marking the start of the second half. While Insu and Upan watched from the sidelines with absolutely no expectations, the players took their positions. On the rival side, the captain's instructions were crystal clear. Their star player, Li, was supposed to keep crushing the scoreboard. Shang Tian regained possession deep in his own half. Li immediately glued himself to him with relentless defense. But instead of setting up a play or looking for a pass, the young man did the unthinkable. From behind the half-court line, he jumped and launched the ball straight toward the opposing basket. The entire gym fell into confused murmurs at the seemingly ridiculous shot. The ball soared impossibly high, flying far beyond Li's reach. The entire arena froze as everyone watched its flawless arc toward the net. Swish. The ball dropped cleanly through the hoop without even touching the rim. Their first 3 points hit like an explosion. The crowd instantly realized this was not luck. It was monstrous skill. Completely calm, Shang Tian raised his index finger and warned everyone that this was only the beginning. Insu and her friend stood there speechless, unable to believe the guy they had brought in as little more than a substitute had just pulled off something like that. Without giving the other team a second to recover, Shang Tian shifted into full attack mode. Dribbling with terrifying speed, he left the crowd favorite, Li, frozen in place and completely behind. In a matter of seconds, he was already storming into the paint, forcing a bald defender from the rival team into a desperate attempt to block him. The young man moved like lightning. Before the opposing defense could even react, he leaped into the air and finished the play flawlessly. The final buzzer sounded, sealing an absolute victory. Scoring an absurd 111 points in that stretch alone, Shang Tian instantly became the center of attention. The bleachers erupted into applause while Insu grabbed her cousin's hand, completely overwhelmed by admiration for the impossible comeback. Unable to accept the humiliation, Upan tried sneaking away alongside Yui, muttering that the outcome had been nothing but luck. Shang Tian immediately stopped him, reminding him about the promise to bark like a dog. Furious and desperate to protect his ego, Upan refused to admit defeat and threw down a new challenge, one that the young man accepted without showing even the slightest fear. Across the court, the defeated team captain quietly reflected on the terrifying level of talent the boy possessed, fully aware that having someone like him on her team would guarantee future victories. But reality hit hard. She had lost the bet. Her blood boiled at the thought of having to call him great husband. Noticing her hesitation, Insu happily poured gasoline on the fire, mocking her and saying she would never actually keep her word. Blinded by rage and cornered, the captain swallowed her pride, screamed the humiliating phrase at the top of her lungs, and ran off in embarrassment. The tone she used sounded less like submission and more like an angry insult shouted during a street fight, leaving both Shang Tian and his cousin standing there in total confusion. After school finally ended, the young man decided to head back to his old house instead of staying at Insu's apartment. The familiar environment instantly filled him with peace. Closing the door behind him, he leaned his head back and tried to relax, but the calm was shattered by an almost imperceptible breeze slicing through the room. Opening his eyes, Shang Tian suddenly found Master Yan Honorable standing right beside him. Without hesitation, the boy bowed deeply out of respect. Keeping his respectful posture, Shang Tian admitted that his father had never mentioned anything about martial arts. Yan Honorable calmly explained that this path would finally reveal all the knowledge the young man had been denied. The swordsman announced that the training would focus on the cloud step technique and the sharp fingers style. Shang Tian looked genuinely surprised, since he had only ever heard names like those in fiction, but Yan Honorable noticed his hesitation and confirmed something shocking. His father had truly been an absolute master of those arts, possibly the previous inheritor of the legacy itself. The instructor explained that, since Shang Tian still lacked the fundamentals, they would begin with internal techniques. The young man focused carefully as Yan Honorable explained that everything revolved around the 8 body forms. Suddenly, Shang Tian experienced a flash of memory. His father used to mention those concepts constantly when he was a child. What had once sounded like nothing more than strange ramblings from an eccentric parent was actually advanced combat strategy training all along. Yan Honorable praised the successor's potential and brought the session to an end. Later, the young man met up with friends at a cafe where Insu and her classmates were also hanging out. The relaxed atmosphere shattered when two men began harassing the girl. One of them became aggressive, grabbing her arm tightly. Insu immediately demanded to be released and cried out for help the moment she spotted her cousin arriving. Shantian carefully sized up the situation. Insu, flushed with frustration and clearly losing patience, demanded that he step in. With a teasing grin, Shantian made a deal he'd help, but only if she agreed to be his girlfriend. The girl instantly blew up in anger. Before things could spiral any further, another guy wearing glasses stepped in and demanded the troublemakers let her go. They backed off for a second, only to surround the group again, warning everyone not to move. Shantian quickly realized that if Insu had been alone, she'd be in serious trouble, but with him there, things were about to go very differently. Insu fired back sharply, making it crystal clear that dating him was never happening. Acting completely unbothered, Shantian casually brought up the bet they had made earlier. Out of nowhere, a massive bald man with broad shoulders and an intimidating frame appeared behind Insu. She immediately denied being connected to anyone there, but the guy flashed a shady grin and started offering drinks to the girls. Even scared, Insu's classmates tried standing up for her, demanding they stop harassing them. The man, Thander, looked at them with pure contempt and ordered everyone to back off, threatening all of them in the process. Realizing things had gotten out of control because of her, Insu desperately called Shantian. At that exact moment, he was in the middle of brutal training after Yan Honorable's lesson, but the second he saw his cousin's name on the screen, he answered without hesitation. The moment he heard her cry for help, he promised he'd be there in seconds. To him, this was the perfect chance to test out his newly learned combat skills. He bolted through the streets. Thanks to the cloud step technique, his speed became downright superhuman, leaving cars in the dust and sending chills down the spines of drivers who caught only a blur rushing past them. In under 2 minutes, the young man landed right at the cafe entrance. The second he walked inside, rage took over. Thander and his crew were trying to drag the students out by force. Shantian didn't waste time talking. He charged straight at them, scattering the attackers across the room, and within seconds dropped every single attacker. When Xander finally turned around, the sight in front of him was terrifying. His men were sprawled across the floor, completely defeated, while the young man stood there untouched, not even a scratch on him. Fear crept into the thug leader's face as Shantian slowly approached. Panicking, Xander stumbled backward, nervously asking who the hell he was. Shantian only smirked, grabbed him by the collar, and yanked him close. Remembering the thug's earlier brag about the soundproof room, he drove a brutal kick straight into Xander's solar plexus. The force launched the man into the door, smashing it apart on impact. Writhing in pain from the damage to his back, the criminal tried crawling away, but Shantian blocked his path. Cold as ice, the young man repeated the thug's own words back to him. "Nobody's coming to save you." Then he shut the door behind them, sealing the room. Outside, the students standing in the cafe lobby turned pale as agonized screams echoed through the walls. The sounds of bones cracking and painful screams seeped through the door, freezing everyone outside in fear. When the door finally opened, Shantian stepped out calmly, dusting off his shoulder like nothing had happened. He simply announced that the problem had been taken care of. Inside, the room looked wrecked, furniture smashed to pieces, and the attacker lying on the floor covered in bruises, barely able to breathe. The sound of an ambulance siren shattered the silence, quickly followed by the police arriving on scene. As officers secured the area, Insu rushed forward, shouting that Shantian had only saved them from an attack. One of the officers told her to stay calm. Keeping a relaxed smile, Shantian reassured his cousin that everything would be ruled self-defense, and there was nothing to worry about. Sensing this wasn't the time to argue, Insu reluctantly stayed quiet, trusting his confidence. As Xander was wheeled away on a stretcher, he screamed down the street for a lawyer, still ranting about the strength of the guy who beat him. Shaken but determined, Insu immediately called her mother. After explaining everything, she was surprised by how calm the woman sounded. She already knew what had happened. In a composed voice, she promised to handle everything and immediately contacted Mr. Su, ordering that no employees be punished or fired, stressing how serious the situation involving his son really was. After ending the call, Shantian's aunt reassured Bin's parents, carrying herself like someone completely in control. Meanwhile, less than 30 minutes later, Shantian was already sitting on the steps outside the local police station. The whole process had wrapped up suspiciously fast, even though he knew the attackers might try to flip the blame and accuse him of assault. The young man walked calmly through the 4th residential district. The silence of the city broke when his phone rang. On the other end, his mother confirmed exactly what he expected. The road was clear, and he'd be released without any major problems. Before hanging up, his aunt told him to come visit the next day. Shantian ended the call, trying to figure out the reason for the sudden invitation, but nothing made sense. As he walked through the city, neon lights reflected across the streets, giving the night an energetic glow. Eventually, he wandered into a cozy cafe to grab dinner. As soon as he settles at the table and opens the menu, a young woman in a red dress walks over with a playful smile and greets him. Moments later, a brunette wearing a sporty tracksuit asks if they can sit with him. Always polite, Shantian agrees. But Bin Bin, who came with the girl in the tracksuit, immediately frowns, clearly irritated by the casual friendliness and easy conversation. Trying to keep things from escalating, the girl in the tracksuit calms Bin Bin down, placing a hand on his waist. Shantian watches the interaction closely, but then his expression suddenly changes. He stares directly at the young woman and says, with unsettling seriousness, that she is seriously ill. The comment leaves everyone at the table stunned. Bin Bin instantly loses his temper, slamming his fist onto the table and threatening to call the police for harassment. Shantian stays completely calm and begins listing exact symptoms: insomnia, constant irritability, and a grim prediction that she wouldn't live past 30. The color drains from the girl's face. Visibly shaken, she asks how he could possibly know something that specific. Shantian quietly revises his estimate. She would only live to 27. The tension around the table becomes unbearable. Bin Bin quickly tries convincing his girlfriend that it's all nonsense, standing up and insisting they leave. But frozen by fear, the girl ignores him and turns back to Shantian, desperately asking if there's any cure. Shantian lets out a short, bitter laugh and comments that if he explained the treatment method, Bin Bin would probably beat him up before he even finished the sentence. The woman in the red dress, who had been quietly observing everything, steps closer to the table, looks over at the group, and curiously asks what exactly is going on. The moment she hears that the only possible treatment would involve marriage, the girl in the tracksuit visibly trembles in shock. Sensing how heavy the atmosphere has become, Shantian awkwardly laughs, lightly grabs her by the arms, and tries to brush everything off as nothing more than a terrible joke. Before leaving, the group places a gold business card on the table. The woman in the red dress, somehow even more mysterious now, leans toward him, gently kisses his forehead, and whispers that the deal is done. Shantian stands there watching the pair walk away. The girl in red quickly catches up to Bin Bin, leaving him alone with a head full of questions. He can't understand the strange kiss, or why everything happened so fast without anyone asking another question. The next morning, he heads to his aunt's office, located in one of the tallest towers in the city. Time is not on his side, he got distracted, and, despite rushing, arrives out of breath and running late. The moment he opens the door and apologizes, Shantian freezes. Sitting across from his aunt are Bin Bin's parents and the same girl from the cafe. The shock hits instantly. The man turns toward him, and his aunt, visibly confused, asks how they already know each other. Bin Bin reacts with open disdain, crossing his arms and trying to distance himself from the awkward situation. His mother, however, notices the tension immediately and asks her nephew what exactly he did to the girl. Sitting on the couch, Shantian calmly assures everyone that nothing happened. Then his aunt smiles knowingly and points directly at him before dropping a bombshell. Shantian is officially the girl's fiancé. The room erupts. Both of them shout in protest at the exact same time. Bin Bin turns red with frustration, while Shantian looks completely dissatisfied with the news. Furious, the girl jumps off the couch and points at him, ready to fight the decision. She starts angrily waving her hands around, demanding the engagement be cancelled immediately, and insisting she never asked to get married. Shantian awkwardly tries stepping in, saying the Bin family just needs to stay strong during such a difficult moment, but the silence that follows is painfully tense. Left with no other choice, Bin Bin eventually gives in to the aunt's demands. The girl's parents bow deeply, grateful for the woman's help, while their daughter stays stiff, glaring at her so-called fiancé with pure disdain. The moment Shantian leaves the office, he catches up with the young woman and demands a proper explanation. She quickly lays out a simple plan. He only needs to pretend to be her boyfriend. The reason? The mayor's daughter, Lin, is obsessed with Yino, and this fake relationship is supposedly the only way to keep things under control. Seeing an opening, Shantian asks about his own parents. Before she can answer, his aunt steps in with a mysterious smile and casually reveals something that completely shakes him. His mother is still alive. Shantian is left speechless. For his entire life, he believed he was an orphan, and now he can't understand why the truth had been hidden for so many years. He follows his aunt all the way to the car, desperately demanding answers, but she stays cold and distant. Looking visibly uncomfortable, the woman quietly admits that she may disappear soon, and that he'll have to become strong enough to protect her. Shantian reaches for her hand, demanding more details, but she shuts the conversation down and leaves. The next day, wandering through the city of Hangai, Shantian can't stop replaying the conversation in his head. Frustration eats away at him. He regrets how quickly he agreed to his aunt's terms without thinking things through. As they drive through the city together, the woman takes advantage of his distracted state and asks for another favor. Still confused and emotionally overwhelmed, Shantian ends up agreeing again. Their ride is suddenly interrupted by panicked screams. A robbery has just happened. A man riding an orange motorcycle snatches a pedestrian's purse and speeds away at full throttle. The biker zooms right past Shantian, glancing at him briefly before dismissing him completely. Never imagining the young man posed any threat, Shantian clenches his fist. The thief keeps laughing to himself, feeling untouchable as he pushes the orange bike even faster. He has absolutely no idea what's coming. Fed up and eager to vent his frustration, Shantian makes his move, activating the Phantom Cloud Immortal Steps. His speed becomes downright inhuman, effortlessly outpacing every sports car on the road. The thief glances back, confident, but in the blink of an eye, Shantian is already right beside him. The young man grabs the motorcycle's handlebars firmly. The criminal, completely stunned, can't even process how someone on foot caught up to him so fast. Shantian wastes no time. He lands a precise strike that throws the bike off balance. The motorcycle spins out of control, cuts across the road, and slams violently into a concrete pillar. The impact crushes the bike into a pile of twisted metal and sends the thief flying several feet away. The man crashes hard onto the ground, groaning in pain, while Shantian calmly walks over to retrieve the stolen purse. Just as the young man bends down to pick it up, movement from the left catches his attention. Instinctively, he turns and blocks a powerful kick from an attacker who seemingly came out of nowhere. He grabs the attacker's ankle, only to be met with an angry glare. It was the young woman, Lin Binbin. The moment she's restrained, she explodes in frustration, protesting about being grabbed like that. Confused, Shantian asks what she's doing there, but the girl snaps back, demanding that he call her by the correct name. Lin Binbin pulls out a police badge and confronts him, claiming he was caught red-handed holding stolen property. Shantian freezes. Faced with such an absurd situation, he starts stammering, desperately trying to explain that he was the hero here, not the criminal. The situation flips when the purse owner, still out of breath from running, finally reaches them and shouts to the officer that Shantian is innocent. She explains that the man lying on the ground is the real thief and that the young man only helped recover her belongings. Bin Bin rubs her forehead in frustration over the misunderstanding, while another officer steps away to deal with the arrested criminal. Shantian hands the purse back to the woman, who thanks him endlessly. In a surprising gesture, the young man even pulls out a 100-yuan bill and offers it to her. She stares at him, confused and embarrassed, asking why he's giving her money. Shantian bursts into laughter and explains, years ago, he had borrowed that amount from a nurse at a hospital and never got the chance to pay it back. The woman's eyes widen as she finally recognizes him. Shantian, she exclaims, remembering how he once turned down a 5 million reward. Shantian furrows his brows, the memory of the money coming back to him, though he still can't remember her name. While she invites him to lunch, Shantian claims he's in a rush because of urgent matters and quickly says goodbye. Bin Bin tries to order him to stay and give a statement, but the moment she turns her head, the young man has already vanished at blinding speed, leaving her speechless. After dealing with the thief, Bin Bin heads to a hotel where she has a meeting with Shantian's aunt. The moment she walks into the room, already apologizing for being late because of the street incident, she freezes. To her surprise, Shantian is sitting at the table beside Madame, casually drinking orange juice through a straw. Bin Bin completely loses her composure, clenching her fists as she angrily blurts out, "Why are you here again? How do you keep showing up everywhere I go?" The young man lets out a mocking laugh and responds with complete calm. Madame assigns the pair a mission to hunt down a third-level assassin. Bin Bin visibly tries to avoid the conversation, clearly uncomfortable. At the same time, the officer lays down one clear rule for her fiancé. Anything unrelated to the task force is off limits. She hands him a file on the target, and he, interested in clues about his father's past, who died the same night as his partner's father, accepts the mission. Under the glow of neon lights, the tension rises. Bin Bin threatens consequences if he messes up, while the young man fires back that he's only there because he has no choice. Their argument gets interrupted when they analyze the target, a tall man in a suit standing outside a bar. Bin guesses the guy is probably a banker or office worker. The young man sarcastically points out that he looks more like security. She pushes back, explaining that the outfit is common for office jobs while maintaining the confidence of someone who knows the field. The focus shifts when they question a sloppy-looking man nearby about his appearance. He admits he was in a hurry, and the young man oddly confesses his admiration for sharply dressed men, leaving the officer confused about his priorities. Their attention returns to the parking lot. After her partner keeps insisting, the officer finally gives in and accepts his help with the investigation. They approach the club, take a deep breath, and step inside, ready for confrontation. The party was packed. On stage, a local performer had the crowd completely hyped, turning the venue into a sea of people. Lost in the crowd, Bin wondered where the assassin could be. Staying calm, her partner suggested they blend in by dancing. He pulled her close, pressing their bodies together. Bin, though clearly embarrassed, went along with it. What she didn't know was that the young man had activated his X-ray vision, a sensor capable of tracking targets even in complete darkness. Shortly after, he made a firm call. No one there matched the criminal's profile. Trusting her instincts, the officer challenged his conclusion, but he insisted they wait. Annoyed, she smacked his arm to make him let go, forbidding any physical contact. He backed off, raising his hands in surrender, until a sudden change in his expression stopped the argument cold. He had found the trail. The target was the bartender. Watching him closely, the man lit a cigarette, the flame from the lighter revealing the sharp details of his face. It was him. The bartender served a glass, and the young man took it, confirming the identity through a quick scan of his features. That's when he realized it. The assassin was standing right behind them. To avoid drawing suspicion, the young man pulled Bin close and kissed her. Shocked, she tried to react, but he whispered instructions for her to stay still, warning that any sudden movement could be fatal. The kiss continued, masking their surveillance, while the target casually chatted with the bartender right behind them. Amid the tense atmosphere, Bin asked what their next move was and whether they should call for backup. The young man explained that, in a situation like this, acting fast was the only way to prevent an imminent murder. He wanted an immediate arrest, and Bin, revealing that this was her first kiss, prepared herself for the final move. Meanwhile, the bartender slowly approached the man sitting at the counter. The exchange of a package for 2 pairs of red lens glasses at the bar marked the start of the operation. The young man broke the kiss, telling Bin to stop pretending, because the target had already noticed them. Still flustered by his boldness, she demanded an explanation, but quickly shifted her focus back to the chase. Determined, she moved toward the man, only for the young man to pull her back after realizing they weren't alone. Henchmen had already blocked the way. The young man burst forward at superhuman speed. Chaos erupted inside the bar. The guards, possibly drunk, stood no chance against the sudden attack and were knocked down instantly. Bin complained that the main target had escaped, but her partner explained the situation. The man belonged to the Unstable Sands organization, making any capture far more complicated. Before she could argue back, a phone rang in the distance. The young man insisted that Bin put on the glasses they had just acquired. The moment she wore them, she was stunned. The lenses revealed traces of night vision dust the young man had secretly spread around the area. However, their surveillance hit a snag. A suspicious figure, a woman in a short skirt with an odd appearance, suddenly crossed their path. The young man wasted no time, confronting the person and exposing the truth. He knew it was actually a man in disguise, noticing obvious details beneath the makeup and clothes. Faced with the threat of police involvement, the cornered individual lowered his guard. The young man handed him a wig and new clothes, demanding that the disguise be improved. It was the only way to continue the pursuit without attracting even more hostile attention under the circumstances. The companion's initial hesitation faded under the young man's persistence, as he appealed to her ambition of joining the special forces. Pressured by promises of career growth, she accepted the change of clothes. Fully disguised and wearing a smug grin, she declared herself ready to prove her worth or make up for any mission failure. Their destination was a karaoke bar. On the way there, she questioned how he could be so certain about the route, considering only she could track the glowing trail using the night vision dust. He brushed it off, crediting his accuracy to professional instinct, hiding the fact that he actually depended on her to guide the search. When they reached the reception area, the young man took control. Even without X-ray vision, his ability to process details through glass surfaces exceeded all expectations. It didn't take long for him to identify the critical location, a room on the left. Tension spiked when a woman accidentally dropped a photograph. The young man quickly picked it up. It was Zenru. There was the confirmation. She was the assassin's target. An employee confirmed that Zenru had reserved a private room. Even as the effects of the night vision dust started to fade, the protagonist remained confident, leading them to the correct door. He ordered his partner to report the situation to headquarters, making sure she stayed out of sight for a while. While she went off to make the report, the protagonist strategically positioned himself in the hallway. Without wasting a second, he locked eyes on the security camera above him, carefully adjusting his posture to keep the lens from capturing his identity as he prepared to break in. The moment he spotted the hidden camera, the young man acted fast. He crouched down as if adjusting the strap of his sandal and, with surgical precision, flicked a coin straight at the device. The hit was perfect, instantly disabling the surveillance. His partner, who had just stepped out of one of the rooms, thanked him for the help and asked for his contact information for future missions, while he focused on the target appearing ahead. The man, noticing the pair, exploded in anger. He didn't recognize the place, but instinct kicked in. He pulled out a weapon, quickly hiding it again, and tried to intimidate the protagonist by threatening to call the authorities. Big mistake. The young man moved in one smooth motion, using the technique known as the immortal steps of the wandering clouds. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind his opponent. Using 2 fingers, he struck a pressure point on the man's neck and immediately followed up with a firm blow that immobilized his head. The ease of the maneuver made him reflect on how much he had evolved. What once felt like a nightmare in the unstable sands was now effortless thanks to the training passed down by his master. Searching the defeated man, he found a necklace concealing a dagger. The blade gleamed with a cold, deadly edge the moment it was revealed. It was a high-quality weapon, and he wasted no time claiming it for himself. At that moment, his partner rushed back, warning him that his aunt was on the way and that they needed to disappear immediately to avoid raising more suspicion. She repeated her gratitude, promising to repay the favor once he officially joined the Special Operations Department. They left quickly, abandoning the aftermath of the confrontation. The goodbye was brief. As soon as the girl left, the protagonist pulled out his phone and called Senru. The warning was direct. An assassin was hunting her. Clearly shaken by the revelation, Senru asked where he was and arranged a meeting to discuss the situation. The trip was interrupted by a commotion. 2 men were beating a third man in an alley. Curled up and crying, the victim stood no chance of defending himself. Disgusted by the cowardice of 2 against 1, the protagonist decided to step in. The attackers tried to intimidate him, telling him to mind his own business, but he refused to back down. The confrontation was over in a flash. With a swift movement, the young man neutralized the first attacker with a precise kick to the leg. When the second tried to fight back, he was overwhelmed by a vicious bite to the hand, shredding the man's resistance within seconds as blood sprayed everywhere. After eliminating the threat and giving them a harsh lesson about abusing strength, the protagonist turned his attention to the man lying on the ground. The guy, who introduced himself as Gao, thanked him for the rescue, and impressed by the power he had just witnessed, begged to be accepted as a student. The protagonist cut through the praise and got straight to the point. Why had he gotten beaten up in the first place? Gao confessed that the whole mess started because those men had stolen his girlfriend. The young man quickly corrected him. His girlfriend hadn't been stolen. She had left by choice. Shantian used the moment to deliver a brutally honest lesson. Without money or power, failure in relationships was almost inevitable. If Gao wanted someone by his side, he needed to become stronger. Driven by desperation, Gao accepted the challenge. Ignoring warnings about how dangerous that path could be, he claimed he had nothing left to lose. The protagonist finally gave in, handing him a business card under one condition. He had to convince the person on the other end of the line to accept him as a disciple. Their farewell was brief, leaving Gao ecstatic over the opportunity. Not long after, while walking down the street, a red car suddenly stopped beside him. Senru was behind the wheel, bringing an air of urgency with her. She explained the trap the elders had set, even going as far as hiring an assassin from the Unstable Sands organization to eliminate her. Shantian asked whether surrendering, giving up her share of the business, would be enough to guarantee peace. She shut the idea down immediately, convinced that handing over her assets would be a fatal mistake. Her enemies feared her comeback, which meant they would never let her stay alive. When pressed about how she planned to solve the situation, she asked for 3 days of trust. Without using illegal methods, she promised she would gather everything necessary to destroy the elders' influence and turn the tables in her favor. The plan was simple: bankrupt the enemies. Cutting off the flow of money meant wiping out the elders' power once and for all. Focused on strategy, the car eventually stopped in front of an enormous mansion. There, Senru made an unexpected move. She handed the young man a set of keys and declared that this would be his home from now on. Though confused, he accepted, and she explained that if an attack happened, he would need full access to the property. Their routine was interrupted by Tiantian's arrival. The little girl ran into the protagonist's arms, complaining about how much she missed him. Senru dismissed the staff, announcing that the day was officially over. She pointed out the room prepared for him, leaving the young man visibly uncomfortable. A sudden noise shattered the silence, startling the girls awake. Instantly, the protagonist took control of the situation. He ordered both of them to stay calm and remain still. With quick reflexes, he gripped his dagger and headed straight for the hallway. The sound was coming directly from Senru's empty bedroom. Without hesitation, Shantian flung the door open and warned the intruder that the ambush had already failed because he knew exactly where he was hiding. From behind a curtain, the enemy revealed himself, a man in brown socks holding a pistol in his left hand. He muttered about his own bad luck at being discovered but quickly aimed the weapon at the boy, demanding to know his target's name before pulling the trigger. Completely confident in his sharpened senses, Shantian simply smiled, readied his blade, and revealed his identity. The gunman's reaction was immediate. The man had already read the young man's file and froze in shock upon realizing he was facing Shang Lon's son, an absolute legend feared across China before the age of 20. Mocking him, the intruder claimed that a well-behaved student like him would never even come close to becoming his father's equal. The atmosphere turned heavier when the negotiation shifted direction. Shantian delivered a direct ultimatum. He would spare the gunman's life if he revealed everything he knew about Shang Lon. The enemy burst into laughter and fired back with his own demand, insisting on the family's heavenly scroll in exchange for the boy's survival. Without backing down an inch and fully ready for bloodshed, Shantian calmly stated that the artifact was right there with him. The message was clear. The assassin was free to try his luck and take it. The intruder grew serious and revealed that the boy's father had been one of the 4 great martial masters of China. When Shantian demanded to know how his father died, the man claimed ignorance and repeated his demand for the heavenly scroll. Surprisingly, the young man simply tossed the artifact to him. Treasure in hand, the gunman arrogantly declared that he would spare the boy's life as an act of mercy. Shantian ignored the bragging and cornered him instead, demanding to know who the true target of the mission was. The assassin finally confessed. Senru was the one marked for death. The entire dynamic shifted when the protagonist proposed a game. The man would have exactly 3 sentences to convince him not to kill him, wasting the first chance. The thug mocked the threat, questioning how a mere kid could possibly kill him. On the second attempt, he tried bargaining by offering more information about the dead master. Finally, he used his last chance to reveal the existence of a total of 8 scrolls. None of the plays worked. Calculating that killing someone there would create a huge mess and ruin the room, Shantian showed no mercy. With one fast, precise strike to the neck, he dropped the enemy instantly, knocking him unconscious on the spot. As the body collapsed, the boy muttered that the right answer had been simple. All the man had to do was promise to leave Senru alone. Moments later, the girl herself appeared at the door, trembling in fear from the commotion. The young man reassured her, saying he would be a terrible protector if he couldn't handle some random thug. Terrified, she threw herself into his arms. Shantian hugged her back and gently told her to calm down and go change clothes. Wiping away her tears, Senru nodded and said she would make something for them to eat. But first she needed to know one thing. Would he protect her forever? The answer came instantly. He promised that nothing bad would ever happen to her or her sister. Charmed by the response, the young woman smiled and left the room. The moment she turned away, Shantian's expression hardened, and he pulled out his phone. With the situation under control, Shantian decided to call in his contacts to clean up the mess. Before long, his support team arrived. At the front door, the protagonist was greeted respectfully by Gawai, Old Su, and the young Faju. While Senru tried to be welcoming and invited them inside, Faju accidentally let slip just how much Brother Su constantly praised the boy's incredible martial arts potential. Cutting straight through the small talk, Shantian led the group to the unconscious man on the floor. He identified the thug as a member of the Unstable Sands organization and assigned the task. The team had to extract every bit of information possible from the intruder and then dump him at the police station with one clear warning attached. Old Su assured him the job would get done and used the opportunity to bring up a new mission. An important competition was about to take place at Lulin Villa, involving property disputes and high-stakes bidding. The boy accepted the task immediately, sealing the deal before his allies headed out. Back in the silence of the house, Shantian's mind drifted to the mystery of the 8 scrolls, wondering just how much power the complete set could unleash. His thoughts were interrupted by Senru. When he asked about Tiantian, the The girl made a disbelieving gesture, confirming that her friend slept so deeply she was still snoring, completely unaware that they had nearly died moments earlier. The adrenaline finally faded, and Senru opened up emotionally. Fighting back tears, she confessed that years of handling everything alone had been cruel, but now his presence made the house finally feel like home. For the first time, she had a safe harbor. Instead of answering with words, Shantian firmly pulled her closer and kissed her out of nowhere. Later, the romance between them was already attracting attention outside. As they walked down the street, the couple quickly became the center of local gossip. A group of girls whispered nearby, instantly recognizing the young woman while desperately trying to figure out who the mysterious guy walking beside Miss Zen actually was. But the boy's mind was somewhere else entirely. He was trying to process the fact that he had reached the second level of celestial awakening. That sudden breakthrough was a direct result of his connection with Senru, a power boost he definitely hadn't expected to gain so quickly. The scene soon shifted to the company's meeting room. The moment the pair walked through the doors, the atmosphere turned heavy. The board members and shareholders were already seated, and the boy's presence was immediately unwelcome. One executive picked a fight right away, attacking Miss Zen for dragging some random kid into a confidential meeting and speaking about him with open disrespect. Senru didn't back down even an inch. She took full responsibility for the young man's actions, officially declaring him her employee and mocking the insults, making it clear that the arrogant shareholder couldn't even compare to him. The argument escalated fast. The man tried humiliating her by calling her shameless, but all he did was light the fuse. Mercilessly, the young businesswoman threw the truth in everyone's face. She openly accused them of being the real masterminds behind every nightmare she had recently endured. The car accident, the kidnapping, and the hired assassin breaking into her home. To prove she wasn't bluffing, she slammed a thick stack of documents onto the center of the table, daring anyone there to deny their crimes. Panic spread instantly. The executives leaned over the papers, and as they reviewed the evidence, cold sweat started dripping down most of their foreheads. Arms crossed and eyes cold, Senru simply watched as fear swallowed the boardroom whole. The man who had insulted her still tried shouting in desperation, claiming everything was fabricated to destroy them. But his protests were useless, while the rest of the directors kept reading the undeniable proof of their downfall. The company's old guard tried fighting the evidence, yelling that the documents were completely fake. But the act didn't last long, and the businessman's real intentions came into the open. The plan had always been to pressure the girl into selling her shares for next to nothing and force her out of the CEO position. But Senru still had one final card to play. Cold and calculating, she announced that she would use the evidence to send the traders straight to prison and, as a bonus, redistribute their shares in the company to whichever executives stayed loyal. Watching everything unfold, Shantian couldn't help but admire the young woman's intelligence and precision. Out of options, one of the higher-ups tried shifting the blame. He pointed straight at Shantian, accusing the boy of being the true mastermind behind a conspiracy to destroy the family's reputation. Senru tried stepping in and telling the man to shut up, but the protagonist took control of the situation himself. He turned toward his partner and asked one direct question. Would wiping those 5 old men off the map solve the problem? She had asked for caution just days earlier, but the young man reminded everyone that the assassins hunting them weren't exactly the type to play by the rules. One of the executives tried to challenge him, questioning the threat. The answer came in the form of a brutal punch straight to the face. As the old man staggered back in shock from the impact, the young man simply smirked and mocked him, saying the guy's arrogance had practically been begging for a hit like that. The tension from the knockout was abruptly interrupted when an employee appeared at the door. He informed the businesswoman that the manager's delivery had arrived outside, waiting to hand over some specific materials. Without losing her composure, she ordered them to bring everything into the room, while Shantian remained in attack position, fully prepared to finish what he started. The atmosphere inside the meeting room exploded the moment the supposed delivery man stepped in. Still gripping the arrogant executive by the collar, Shantian noticed something immediately felt off: the heavy sound of footsteps. Without letting go of the businessman, he sarcastically questioned since when office workers started wearing military tactical boots. The act collapsed instantly. The fake messenger threw papers into the air, pulled a knife out of nowhere, and charged straight at Senru. The businesswoman tried to back away in panic, but the protagonist reacted in a fraction of a second. One sharp strike to the attacker's wrist, he sent the blade flying across the floor. Before the assassin could even blink, Shantian vanished from sight and reappeared, pinning him against the wall. Shocked by that inhuman speed, the thug desperately reached for his gun, threatening to shoot. The humiliation came fast. The boy casually opened his free hand, letting a shower of bullets fall onto the meeting room floor. He had already emptied the revolver's cylinder without anyone even noticing. Using a high-level movement technique, Shantian glided toward the assassin and pressed two razor-sharp fingers against his throat. The entire room froze in terror. With a deadly stare, the young man demanded to know which executive had paid for the dirty work, delivering a final ultimatum. They would transfer all their shares to Senru and turn themselves in to the police, or none of them would leave alive. Panic spread among the shareholders as people started shouting over one another. Right in the middle of the chaos, police stormed into the room asking who had made the emergency call. Seizing the opportunity, one of the executives pointed directly at the boy, accusing him of being armed and responsible for all the trouble. The officer marched to the center of the office, demanding to know who was in charge of the situation. Without hesitating for even a second, Miss Zen stepped forward, got the officer's attention, and firmly declared that she was responsible for everything. The supposed police officer ordered the businesswoman to come with him to give a statement. When Shantian questioned what they planned to do with the captured assassin sitting right there in the room, the officer brushed it off, claiming backup units were on the way and telling the boy to stay put. Senru found it strange when she was guided toward a hidden exit of the building, but the man quickly explained that his patrol car was parked in the back. Meanwhile, as the protagonist sent instructions to his own people to block every escape route, the office's main doors suddenly burst open as a real tactical police squad stormed inside. A female officer rushed in, ordering everyone not to move. The boy recognized her immediately and casually asked if she was the backup they had just mentioned. Her answer instantly triggered alarm bells. Her unit was the first and only one to arrive. It hit Shantian immediately. The first officer had been an imposter. Outside, the situation was already spiraling out of control. The fake cop threw open the trunk of a car and ordered Senru to get inside. Furious, she stood her ground and refused, arguing that she was there to cooperate with the law and wasn't some criminal to be shoved into a trunk like cargo. When the man tried grabbing her by force, the girl immediately sensed the danger and demanded to know who he really was. Shantian was already sprinting through the streets in panic, desperately trying to call the young woman while the real police followed behind him. The entire situation had been a perfectly calculated trap. From the rooftop of a nearby building, a sniper gave the signal, and multiple armed thugs began pulling out their weapons. In the final split second, the boy reached Senru, grabbed her, and hurled her out of the line of fire just before the bloodbath could begin. Chaos erupted outside when one of the officers was shot in the shoulder, screaming for everyone to take cover from the sniper. Still shielding Senru with his own body, Shantian quickly analyzed the area and realized the sniper's aim had suddenly disappeared. The enemy had already retreated. One of the officers tried asking how he knew that, but the boy ignored her completely, focusing only on calming down the shaken executive. He understood perfectly well that the assassins weren't giving up anytime soon. Sending two hitmen at once was proof that Senru's nightmare was far from over. The following morning, the tense atmosphere gave way to a sunny day and an intense school basketball game. The court was alive with skilled shots and girls cheering wildly, while one player even asked to sit out after hurting his leg from jumping too much. But Shantian's mind was far away from the game. He was replaying recent events, calculating his next move against the mercenaries, when his danger radar suddenly went off. He fixed his eyes on the bleachers and spotted an isolated, suspicious figure, a man wearing a black hoodie. The moment the intruder realized he had been spotted and started backing away, the protagonist didn't hesitate. Pulling off flawless parkour with superhuman agility, Shantian vaulted over the guardrails and took off after the enemy, abruptly abandoning the scene and leaving the girls in the stands speechless, with one of them silently hoping he would be okay. The frantic chase moved beyond the basketball courts and into an area surrounded by dense trees and thick bushes. The boy's speed was overwhelming, and he quickly caught up with the target. Realizing he had nowhere left to run, the hooded man stopped, turned to face him, and tried intimidation instead, asking whether the young man wasn't afraid that he had been lured straight into a deadly ambush. Relentless as ever, Shantian already had an answer waiting on the tip of his tongue. The boy believed the criminal syndicate was still hunting Senru, even with the original masterminds already behind bars. The hooded man, however, revealed the true nature of the ambush. The businesswoman no longer mattered. The real target now was Shantian himself, hunted solely because he carried his father's bloodline. Without wasting time on conversation, the assassin lunged forward with a blade in hand. Shantian answered in kind, drawing his dagger wrapped in a green aura. The mercenary recognized the weapon immediately, declaring that the boy was just as much of a thorn in the side as his father and deserved the same fate. While the protagonist tried squeezing information out of him about his family's deaths, the enemy carefully analyzed his level of power. The thug admitted he had been fooled by the boy's ordinary appearance and was shocked to realize Shantian had already mastered the early stage of the martial level known as Huan. Calculating that the young man would become an uncontrollable monster in the future, the assassin decided to finish him off right there. He unleashed a deadly barrage of razor-sharp discs. Moving like lightning, Shantian dodged purely on instinct. The projectiles sliced through the air and severed tree trunks around them like paper, leaving the boy stunned by the brutal power of a second-class enemy. The real shock, however, hit the attacker. Watching his technique get avoided so effortlessly, the mercenary panicked and realized his fatal mistake. Shantian was far beyond the beginner stage. Overcome with fear, the assassin turned and ran for his life, but it was useless. In a split second, the protagonist caught up and crushed him. The hunt ended with the boy standing cold and unshaken over the enemy's bloodied body, demanding that he explain exactly how to reach the final stage of that power. Staring at the defeated enemy bleeding on the ground, Shantian became certain those thugs knew nothing about his father's past. Accepting that he would uncover the truth another way in the future, he turned his back and walked away. Still drenched in sweat from the battle, the boy met up with his old gray-haired master. The reunion was brief and carried the tone of a goodbye. The veteran revealed he would be leaving the city of Hangai the following day and used their final moments to deliver a serious warning. The boy needed to be extra careful around the unstable Sands faction. Unsure of what the future held, Shantian simply thanked him for all the training, saying goodbye respectfully before continuing on his way. Later, danger gave way to routine. Shantian was riding in the backseat of a speeding car. The girl sitting in the passenger seat asked him about the chase from earlier, but he brushed it off easily, lying that he had simply mistaken a stranger for an old friend. The trip was interrupted when Shantian's phone rang. On the other end, a desperate student confessed that she had run away from home just to train martial arts under him, going against her family's wishes. With absolutely no patience for teenage drama, the boy got annoyed and abruptly hung up. The driver, a woman named Wen, immediately tried to pry, asking who had called, but he brushed the question aside. Trying to ease the mood inside the car, the girl in the passenger seat explained to Wen that Shantian was only her cousin pretending to be her boyfriend to keep up appearances. The driver looked surprised. She had assumed the boy was some shameless playboy since he always seemed surrounded by different girls. The comment irritated the protagonist, who fired back without hesitation, calling Wen nosy and annoying. The insult instantly set the driver off, making her yell at him to repeat what he had just said. While the argument exploded inside the moving car, reality looked very different elsewhere in the city. The runaway student stared at her phone in panic, hearing nothing but the sound of the disconnected call. After breaking ties with her parents and getting hung up on by her master, she was now alone on the street with nowhere to go. Feeling ignored by her teacher, the runaway student decided her only option was to pull a scam and squeeze some money out of someone. The perfect target appeared right ahead, a blue car approaching down the road. Without thinking twice, she ran forward and threw herself toward the vehicle. Behind the wheel, Wen barely had time to yell for everyone to hold on before slamming the brakes. The violent jolt sent everyone lurching forward. Outside, the girl rolled near the tire and launched into an Oscar-worthy performance, crying loudly and pretending both her arms and legs were broken. From inside the car, Shantian saw through the act immediately. Completely unimpressed, he simply stated that nothing serious had happened. Desperate to be heard, the scammer kept calling for teacher, dragging the drama out as much as possible. But Wen was the one who exploded in anger. Furious, the driver jumped out of the car, grabbed the girl, and gave her a brutal scolding. She called her a brat and threatened serious consequences for trying to extort people by faking an accident. Shantian quickly cut the situation short, shutting the whole act down as the group regrouped to continue their plans. With the chaos behind them, the focus shifted to dinner. The girl accompanying the protagonist admitted the outing had actually been Wen's idea. Apparently, the The boy's insane performance on the basketball court had attracted a lot of attention, and two girls were absolutely determined to meet him. It didn't take long for the meetup to happen. The two young women approached the group. One of them got straight to the point, shaking the boy's hand and openly admitting she had become a huge fan after the game, while the protagonist was still trying to process the fact that he apparently had a fan club now. The girl suddenly threw out a bizarre challenge. She claimed to have heard a rumor that he had the ability to guess what kind of underwear women were wearing and demanded that he prove it right then and there. With a crooked smile and gritted teeth, Shantian didn't back down. Since she had asked for it, he accepted the challenge on the spot. The fan's suggestion about revealing her underwear completely caught Shantian off guard. While she kept pushing the joke, he tried figuring out what her real intentions were. He asked whether she was wearing some kind of disguise or hiding who she really was. The fan's friend jumped in, teasing the girl and suggesting that maybe he was only interested in girls with plastic surgery, but Shantian denied it, saying he was only curious about her unusual style of clothing. The fan admitted that she wore oversized clothes because she felt insecure about her body and didn't consider herself attractive. In a bold move, she suddenly asked her idol to date her. The other girl tried to interrupt, but Shantian fired back, questioning why he would get involved with someone who kept calling herself unattractive. Things heated up when the fan, offended, demanded to know who had spread that rumor and suggested she could prove him wrong herself. Shantian immediately accepted the challenge, but with so many people around, nothing could happen there. Before they could head somewhere more private, his friends dragged him away, already exhausted by the girl's non-stop teasing. The peace didn't last long. Near home, they were approached by a young man waiting for Senru. Completely ignoring Shantian's presence, the stranger started hitting on her, insisting he still had a chance. To seal the forced attempt at romance, the man proudly showed off a brand new red BMW and tried shoving the keys into her hands. Senru rejected the gift with open disgust, but the guy insisted that once a gift was offered, it couldn't be taken back. Shantian stepped forward, casually snatching the keys out of the man's hands. Seeing an opportunity, the guy proposed a deal. Shantian could keep the car as long as he stayed away from Senru forever. Without hesitation, the boy agreed to take the vehicle and started walking away, leaving the man frozen in the middle of the street before suddenly stopping to process what had just happened. Shantian walked over to the grandfather, who was resting with his cane, and proudly showed off the red BMW keys like a trophy. Announcing that the car now belonged to the old man, Senru panicked, scolding the boy for making fun of someone with physical limitations and begging him to give the vehicle back. Shantian ignored the lecture and simply asked if Grandpa wanted the gift. Without thinking twice, the old man grabbed the keys and headed straight for the car. The original owner desperately tried to intervene, but it was already too late. Grandpa climbed behind the wheel and, before anyone could react, slammed on the gas. Within seconds, the car sped forward and crashed violently into a wall. The scene quickly turned into full-on heartbreak. The car owner, his perfectly styled hair now completely overshadowed by panic, burst into tears watching his luxury ride destroyed against the wall. The pain wasn't just emotional, it was financial too. Since he hadn't been driving during the crash, insurance probably wouldn't cover the damage. The next morning arrived bright and sunny as Shantian casually went about his routine. While walking to school, he noticed a car pulling up beside him. Sitting in the passenger seat, a girl commented that he looked completely out of place heading to school on foot and suggested he should really have a car. The driver, looking down on him with obvious contempt, immediately shot the idea down, saying there was no way he'd give him a ride. According to him, Shantian brought bad luck, and he had no intention of letting someone like that ruin the spotless interior of his car. The girl tried insisting, but the man stubbornly claimed he'd do anything for her, except open the door for Shantian. Shantian gave a cold warning, pointing out the dangers of reckless driving and mentioning the accident from the day before. Instead of listening, the girl exploded at him, throwing insults and bitterly regretting ever having feelings for someone like him. The argument ended abruptly when the couple's car slammed straight into a truck up ahead. Ignoring yet another accident, Shantian kept walking and soon arrived at the classroom. The place was buzzing with activity as students settled into their seats, unpacked supplies, and waited for class to begin. The humiliation happened publicly. His ex-girlfriend ended things right there, confidently claiming Shantian would never find someone else and mocking his appearance. Completely unfazed, he accepted the breakup, making it clear that people living on entirely different levels and realities simply didn't belong in the same world. The tense atmosphere broke when someone knocked on the classroom door. An unfamiliar young woman stepped inside asking for Shantian. The entire class instantly started whispering, stunned by how beautiful the newcomer was, completely overshadowing the girl who had just dumped him moments earlier. Shantian, however, ignored everyone's reactions. His attention locked onto one thing only, a wooden horse in the girl's hands. In the blink of an eye, he rushed forward, took the object, and demanded to know who had sent her. Without explaining much, she simply instructed him to follow her to someone waiting for him. He left immediately, leaving the class speechless at the sudden shift in status. Far from school, surrounded by towering skyscrapers and a lively urban skyline, the wait finally came to an end. A man spotted the boy in the middle of the street and called out his name. Shock washed over Shantian as he recognized Brother Ma, and he immediately ran over for an emotional hug. An entire decade had passed since they last saw each other, and Ma wasted no time pointing out just how much the young man now resembled his father. Shantian could barely process the reunion. Confirming that he had been the one who sent the wooden horse, Ma finally revealed the identity of the beautiful messenger who had brought him there. She was Labai, his own daughter, the same little girl who used to follow the protagonist around years ago. During their meal, the past resurfaced. When asked about Shantian's father, Brother Ma shared a tense story. Years ago, he had nearly been killed. He only survived because the boy's godmother saved him. Though the price was exile, he was forbidden from ever returning home. Shantian wasn't surprised, remembering that his father had always been a solitary man. To repay the debt of gratitude, Ma offered the young man a place to stay under his own roof. The reunion was interrupted by a business call. An ally needed urgent help dealing with a crisis, as his father had been completely immobilized by a severe gout attack. Ma brought Shantian along for the mission, using the drive to explain the setup. They were heading to deal with an influential construction materials businessman, a man loaded with high-level connections but easily swayed by money. As soon as they arrived at the meeting place, Shantian's attention suddenly shifted. He spotted an elderly man in distress and immediately rushed forward, yelling for no one to touch him, ignoring Ma's shock and the protests from the men nearby, who called him crazy and demanded he let go of the professor. The boy lifted the old man and threw him over his shoulders. Right in the middle of everyone's panic, Shantian flipped the elderly man upside down in one swift movement. The maneuver worked instantly. Now breathing in relief while resting on the couch, the old man thanked the young man for saving his life. Calm and completely unfazed, Shantian simply asked what he had eaten that caused him to choke like that. The elderly man explained that the sickness started after drinking a tonic snow frog soup, supposedly a remedy sent by an old acquaintance. Suspicious, Shantian asked to inspect the dish. As soon as a servant brought the bowl, the young man stirred the liquid, analyzed the contents, and got straight to the point, asking just how deep the bad blood was between the old man and whoever had prepared it. The answer instantly raised the tension. The meal had been delivered by the elderly man's own son. Shantian then gave a deadly diagnosis. The naturally cold essence of the animal, combined with the wrong herbs, had created a lethal cold poison capable of killing even a healthy man in under 3 months. The boy assured everyone the problem could be fixed and only requested a silver acupuncture needle kit. The old man clung to him, begging for help, but the moment was interrupted by one of the men in the room, demanding to see Shantian's medical license. Keeping completely calm, the protagonist admitted he had no diploma at all. The rules were simple. Either they trusted his desire to heal, or he would turn around and leave immediately. Knowing he probably wouldn't have even survived the trip to a luxury hospital without the boy's earlier intervention, the patient decided to trust him. Meanwhile, another suited man was panicking over the phone, yelling that an unlicensed healer was about to commit murder and demanding that real doctors be brought to the scene. Even Brother Ma started feeling uneasy and demanded answers, but Shantian simply explained that he had learned those techniques from his father. The argument ended the second the medical kit arrived. With the patient's approval, the young man opened the case and froze for a moment, completely stunned to recognize the tools inside. They were the legendary divine needles of Bayan. The patient complimented the boy's sharp eye but revealed an important detail. The case didn't contain the originals, only perfect replicas crafted from ancient records. To Shantian, the practical value remained the same. With equipment like that, he guaranteed a full recovery within a month at most. Once he got the green light, treatment began. Standing behind the elderly man, the young hero inserted the first needle. Brother Ma watched nervously, sweating bullets and terrified something might go wrong. but Shantian's control was absolute. The second insertion went so smoothly that the recovery time dramatically dropped. The entire procedure would only take 10 minutes. While the healing continued, the street outside turned into a tactical operation zone. Police cars surrounded the building after receiving a report that hostages were supposedly being held inside. Without a clear view of the situation, the tactical team decided to storm the place. Guns raised, officers rushed upstairs, kicked the door open, and shouted for everyone to surrender with their hands up. The tension vanished instantly. The assault team found nothing but a group of men calmly sitting on the couch. The commanding officer justified the raid by citing a kidnapping report, but the elderly man immediately denied everything, insisting no one had been held captive. Cornered, the person who had called the police in panic quickly shifted tactics. He pointed straight at Shantian and changed the accusation, now claiming the boy was illegally practicing medicine. The act didn't last long. The patient took control of the situation himself, explaining to the officers that the accuser was nothing more than an incompetent doctor who had just been fired. The police call had been nothing but petty revenge. The officers wasted no time cuffing the liar, who whined and begged for mercy while being dragged away. Free from the interrogation, the young man tried to thank the old man, only to be caught off guard. As a reward, the elderly man pushed the needle case toward him. Shantian hesitated, fully aware of how priceless the item was, but the veteran shut the discussion down, saying a relic like that only belonged in the hands of someone who truly knew how to use it. The protagonist accepted the gift with a satisfied smile. Right outside the building, he ran into Officer Bin Bin and immediately tried to break the ice by calling her his girlfriend. She shut down the familiarity on the spot. Getting straight to business, she made it clear she only came looking for him because his aunt had asked for help. The mission was risky and straightforward. Infiltrate an underground casino, find a target named Bangan, and figure out who was really pulling the strings behind him. There was one obvious problem, though. After taking one look at the officer's formal outfit, the young man warned her she'd get rejected at the casino entrance in seconds. Without hesitation, he grabbed her hand and pulled her into a room for a wardrobe change. When Bin Bin finally reappeared wearing much shorter and bolder clothes, he even suggested she pull her top down a little more to look more intimidating. Embarrassed and irritated by his boldness, she simply told him to shut up, and the two headed out. The pair made their way through narrow alleyways until they finally reached the target location. The entrance was blocked by 3 thugs standing guard, who immediately stopped them and demanded to know who they were. Without showing even the slightest hesitation, the young man stared the trio down and, confidently bluffing his way through, claimed he was an old friend of the boss. The guy wanted to know why she was supposedly so important. Without wasting a second, the protagonist pulled the girl closer and made it crystal clear in front of everyone that she was his wife. Shantian looked straight at the thugs surrounding them and casually asked if there was still any confusion about that. The group went completely speechless. Without warning, the protagonist leaned closer to the girl's face, leaving Bin Bin visibly nervous. The young officer instantly blushed, clearly caught off guard by how close he suddenly was, staring at him without knowing how to react. Meanwhile, the man on the other side told him not to overdo it. A little later, the girl entered the room and told Shantoya that if he really intended to go through with it, he should just do it already. The boy immediately thanked her, completely confused by the response, and tried to understand what she actually meant. She brushed it off, claiming it was nothing important. At the casino, as they walked further inside, the protagonist noticed how tense the atmosphere felt and told her to relax a little. Without leaving room for argument, he guided her to a betting table and asked her to sit down. Right in the middle of the game, a police officer showed up, curious about what was going on. The protagonist tried figuring out whether she felt comfortable with the situation or not, but the girl completely missed what he was trying to ask. A casino employee soon approached them, wanting to confirm the details of the bet. Without hesitation, the protagonist held the girl by the shoulders and explained that his wife was simply making a small wager. The game started, and the results ended up favoring the lower numbers. Meanwhile, the officer asked if that woman was Victoria Shantian. She calmly responded that she had only stopped by to have a little fun before continuing her search somewhere else. The girl grew visibly more tense, while the protagonist quietly observed the environment around them. Realizing they needed answers, he concluded they would have to find someone in trouble and squeeze information out of them. He began scanning the casino floor until finally settling on a target. Spotting a man sitting alone, He approached and casually asked if he needed money. The guy admitted he wasn't even in a position to ask for a loan. Without beating around the bush, the protagonist clarified that this wasn't about borrowing cash. If the man gave him the right information, he'd get paid. The bar counter became the setting for the exchange of information. Shantian, smiling, listened as the man gave a rundown of the girl's gambling performance. Even though she had completely emptied her pockets and lost every cent, he praised her progress anyway. The young woman reacted in total shock, asking if he was actually being serious. The man then jokingly tried to bargain for a kiss in exchange for more answers, instantly making her blush, but quickly laughed it off and admitted he was only teasing. He explained that the target they were looking for usually showed up there every Sunday and promised to help them at the right moment. With his card now in her hands, the girl thanked him without hesitation. His final warning came bluntly, making it clear that the real problem went far beyond just a kiss. Moments later, his phone rang. A quick wave goodbye was suddenly interrupted by a surprise kick thrown by a police officer. Xanon stood there completely confused, unable to make any sense of what was happening. Meanwhile, outside, the city buzzed with energy as college entrance exams began, flooding sidewalks with students. The chaos eventually dragged the protagonist all the way to the gates of Hangai High School. Exhausted from all the running around, he decided the new plan was to find a quiet spot for a drink. A nearby nightclub looked like the perfect place to drown out the stress of an exhausting day. At the bar, things moved fast with a woman sitting nearby, who quickly accepted his invitation for a drink with a nod. The calm didn't last long. A stranger suddenly grabbed his drink, downed it in one shot, and tightly grabbed his arm. Stunned, the boy watched as she nervously tried to play it off, telling him he should take it easy on the alcohol. The truth showed up right behind her. 3 guys surrounded the area. The gang leader demanded that the girl hand over the stolen wallet and end things right there, but she kept up the act, pretending she had no idea what they were talking about. The gang leader lost patience and demanded that she cooperate peacefully. Without even thinking, she used the protagonist as a human shield, blurting out that he was her boyfriend and would handle everything. Fearless as always, Shantian casually reached into his pocket and pulled out a notebook, offering it to the guys with a sarcastic smile. The thief thought he was trying to calm things down, but the thugs felt completely mocked and rushed him. Without even turning around to face the trouble, the hero casually remarked that he wasn't really into fighting men. The attack was ordered, but the whole thing turned into a joke. Shantian clenched his fists and, with brutal speed and precision, cleared the room in seconds, leaving the young woman frozen in complete shock. In the middle of the chaos, a woman named Honi appeared looking for the thief, who immediately begged not to be handed over. Shantian simply demanded repayment for the stolen drink before stepping aside and letting things move on. Out on the street, the girl offered to split a taxi ride to his place, but the protagonist turned her down, joking that she'd probably cry once she realized he didn't even have money to pay for the ride. Panicked, she started digging through her pockets looking for the stolen wallet. With unbelievable speed, Shantian was already holding it between his fingers, casually revealing that he had pickpocketed her back and returned the wallet to its rightful owners. Impressed by his skills, she openly called him a professional. Soon after, the protagonist grabbed a taxi and headed home. His phone rang. It was his brother checking in about the school exams. Shantian reassured him and shifted focus to the real goal, the tournament happening in 3 days. He knew he wasn't weak anymore, having gained more than enough power to crush rivals on Sand's level. After getting out of the car, he joined his allies outside the massive estate of Lulan Villa, the Green Forest. The guards were already lined up along the staircase, waiting in formation. The head of the household personally came out to welcome the group, inviting the elders inside while asking the young man when exactly he had arrived. As the two stepped into the villa, Shantian couldn't hide his disappointment. He had expected a much bigger challenge when he came looking for Mr. Fan. Walking up to the receptionist, he confirmed who he was and got recognized immediately. The man wanted to make sure the kid was actually ready for the fight that night, but Shantian answered without hesitation. If he wasn't ready, he wouldn't have shown up in the first place. Laughing at the confidence, the man called him a monster trapped in a young body before opening the doors. Inside, the guide informed Mr. Fan that the group had arrived a little late. The host brushed it off and, once everyone had gathered, laid out the rules. The rivals' terms were brutal. If he won, he wanted Sui to Chuan's eyes and the leg of the man he considered nothing but dead weight. Shantian cut him off and asked what would happen if things went the other way. The rival promised that if Shantian's side won, old debts would be settled and his father would never be bothered again. The rival's son exploded in anger, demanding Shantian's death, but his father shut him down, muttering that he was already looking forward to watching the execution. With the tension rising, the man tried pulling his son away, claiming the boy was too naive to get involved. Shantian brushed the drama aside, making it clear that none of it changed anything. If they wanted his head, they would have to earn it. The rival mocked the boy's confidence, doubting he could even stay alive in the fight, and swore that this time nobody would save him from the unstable sands. The mention of the mysterious group immediately caught attention. When asked if he was tied to that dangerous faction, Shantian calmly denied any connection. Satisfied, the mediator officially approved the duel under his personal protection, no matter how high the stakes were. Without wasting another second, the opponent launched a brutal attack, forcing Shantian to raise his guard instantly to block the strike. The block landed perfectly, and Shantian answered with heavy punches to push the man back. The exchange turned intense, with the protagonist countering every savage blow without taking a single step backward. Watching the fight, Mr. Fan was visibly impressed after realizing the young man was using Tai Chi techniques to neutralize his opponent. The rival soon noticed the kid had already mastered the yellow level of combat and decided to stop holding back. He charged in with full force, throwing a deadly kick aimed straight at Shantian's head. Shantian dodged and recovered smoothly. That was when the man realized his mistake. The boy was growing stronger way too fast and had to be eliminated before he became an even bigger threat. In the crowd, nerves started taking over as Shantian's allies feared the villain, now fighting seriously, would kill him. Sensing the murderous intent, Shantian switched tactics immediately, leaving zero room for mistakes. He slipped through the enemy's defense at insane speed and drove a medical needle directly into the man's leg. The effect was instant. The rival collapsed, drenched in sweat and screaming in pain. Taking advantage of the opening, Shantian moved in fast and struck the same leg again with a focused two-finger energy attack. As the old man writhed in agony on the floor, Shantian's allies celebrated the sudden turnaround. Looking down at his defeated opponent, the protagonist calmly explained that while he had spared his life, both of his legs would remain useless from now on, payment for old debts. Once the duel was over, Mr. Fan approached, curious about the young man's fighting style, and asked who had taught him Tai Chi. Shantian casually brushed it off, saying he had randomly picked up the moves from some old guy in a park. Mr. Fan smiled, clearly understanding the joke. The family techniques gave it away. That mysterious old man could only be the former mentor of Villa Lulin. An invitation to celebrate came right after, but Shantian turned it down, saying he had urgent matters to handle and would save the celebration for another time. The moment he left the venue, the scene shifted. A young police officer approached the front of the same building, calling out his name. She admitted she didn't expect to run into him there, while Shantian casually explained why he had been late. Smiling, she said being unpredictable was basically his trademark. Dressed in civilian clothes she had picked out herself for the occasion, the officer hurried to catch up with him, only for her high heel to snap halfway there. Shantian gave her a reality check, asking if she even knew how to walk in shoes like that, while offering to help. That was when the thief from the bar suddenly showed up again, laughing at how crazy the reunion was. Confused, the officer asked who the girl was. Without hesitation, Shantian exposed her on the spot, casually revealing that she was a thief. The second she heard that, the officer's instincts kicked in. Forgetting all about the pain in her foot, she took off after the girl, yelling for her to stop. Caught completely off guard, the thief bolted. Shantian could only watch with an amused smile, quietly admitting to himself that maybe he should have kept his mouth shut, realizing his talent for ending up in ridiculous situations had dragged him into yet another mess. The chase ended near the building entrance, where the owner of the place boldly stepped in, standing between the officer and the runaway to protect her. Shantian stepped forward and calmed the officer down, arguing that despite the girl's history, she technically hadn't committed any crime right then and there. When the officer questioned letting a criminal walk free, he defended the idea that everyone deserves a second chance, especially since the girl hadn't stolen anything this time. Taking advantage of the truce, the woman protecting the thief offered to smooth things over with drinks. The tension in the air was obvious, but the long-haired woman quickly broke the awkward mood by telling the protagonist to go grab some bandages. After patching things up, the group finally settled around the table. While everyone else drank and casually chatted, the police officer stayed quiet, arms crossed, simply watching everything unfold. The relaxed atmosphere and contagious laughter slowly chipped away at the officer's resistance. Stretching over, she grabbed the drink sitting right in front of Shantian, completely catching him off guard with the bold move. Without hesitation, Bin downed the entire drink in one shot. Never one to miss a chance to tease, Shantian smirked and joked that technically counted as an indirect kiss, earning a few mischievous grins from everyone watching. The bar owner took the opportunity to tease Shantian, saying he was making everyone else jealous. playing clueless. He shrugged it off, but the businesswoman insisted he was way too oblivious to notice how women acted around him, daring him to open his eyes. Not long after, Bin, already a little tipsy, grabbed him by the hand and pulled him away for a walk. Shantian joked about how terrible the officer's self-control was, asking how someone supposedly on duty could crash that fast. Watching the whole thing, the thief sighed dramatically, disappointed that the guy was already taken. The bar owner just warned the pair not to wreck the place. Right in the middle of the lounge, Bin grabbed the karaoke mic and admitted that this was the first time she had ever allowed herself to break the rules. Fueled by alcohol, she started singing a bittersweet song, quietly wishing for a future where the two of them could be together. Shantian clapped for the performance, joking that the pop music world had clearly missed out on a superstar. Bin laughed and admitted the singing was really just cover for her real mission, then asked if he was any closer to reaching his goals. Shantian assured her he was getting there, while quietly asking her to keep her voice down. Bin then revealed she had already secured the nicest room in the place for the two of them. Shantian looked at her, fully aware that their main target was already nearby, but this wasn't the right moment to move. Ruining a romantic vibe didn't bother him, but dragging this little game out with the officer would only make the night messier. Without wasting another second, the protagonist headed toward the exit, cutting through the mood entirely. His expression turned serious as he told the officer the fun was over and they needed to leave. Confused by the urgency, Bin complained that the karaoke song wasn't even finished yet. The warning came bluntly. Their target had just arrived. Bin froze, shocked and annoyed that he hadn't told her Jashi was already there. Shantian only smirked, saying surprises made the job more interesting, and judging by the vibe, the guy was definitely involved in something serious. Anxious, the officer tried moving in closer to spy on the group, but Shantian stopped her. Calmly, he explained they didn't even need to move, because he could figure out every word from where they stood. Surprised, she asked if he could actually read lips. He confirmed it and immediately laid out the situation. Jashi's partner was a foreigner, and they were discussing the smuggling of a valuable relic that would arrive in Hangai in 3 days. Their goal was to intercept it. Alarmed by the seriousness of the crime, Bin awkwardly joked, asking if he was messing with her. Shantian shut the joke down immediately, making it clear the situation was deadly serious. She gave in, admitting she trusted his instincts and would use the mission to prove what she was capable of. Before leaving, Shantian apologized for disappearing so suddenly, explaining that his cousin had called and demanded he come home immediately. Curious, Bin asked if they actually lived together. After hearing him confirm it, her protective instincts instantly kicked in, and she questioned how anyone thought that arrangement was okay when the girl wasn't even old enough to get married yet. Shantian burst out laughing and explained there was nothing weird going on. She was family, and besides, they weren't living alone since her best friend also stayed there. Bin's imagination instantly ran wild at the thought of one guy living with 2 girls, forcing Shantian to stop her and tell her to quit making up ridiculous stories. With everything settled, the two parted ways, agreeing to move when the timing was right. Outside, the night sky was perfectly clear and full of stars. The second Shantian opened the front door, he was greeted like a celebrity. The girls, who had been anxiously waiting for him to come back, immediately started clapping and celebrating, congratulating him on reaching the top and becoming the best of the best. The day after the entrance exam, the welcome home got even crazier. Some of the girls greeted him in bold, eye-catching outfits, clearly trying to get a reaction out of him. He did his best to stay composed as they kept getting way too close, turning the whole place into pure chaos. By the next morning, after things finally settled down, Shantian thought back on the night and realized that celebration had almost gotten way out of hand. The reason for the party was legit. He had absolutely crushed the exams with flawless scores. Determined to move forward and focus on what really mattered, he cleared his mind of distractions. His next stop was an important meeting with Cien's sister, who was already waiting for him at their agreed location. When he arrived, Shantian noticed a flashy bouquet of red roses sitting right in the middle of the table. Greeting the young woman, she complimented his punctuality before quickly asking for help. Curious, he asked where the flowers had come from. She showed him the cheesy note attached to the bouquet, and Shantian instantly roasted the gesture, saying it had absolutely zero creativity. Without hesitation, she grabbed the flowers and tossed them straight into the trash. Shantian asked Senru why she seemed so irritated. She finally opened up, explaining she had been constantly bothered by Hangai, a guy known as the city's fourth young knight. Shantian quickly connected the dots, remembering the reputation of that group. She explained they were basically four spoiled rich heirs who abused their family influence to get whatever they wanted. Shantian specifically remembered Wen Zhao, the second son of the powerful Jinan family, mentioning that the guy had already tried getting close to his cousin Zenu, and that crossing paths with people like them only ever led to trouble. The mention of the group didn't shake the protagonist at all, even knowing the heir was seen as Hangai's untouchable genius doctor, ruling the city without anyone daring to challenge him. Completely unfazed, Shantian made it clear he had no problem going head-to-head with people like that. Realizing how serious the situation was, Senru tried to backtrack and begged him to let it go. That was the exact moment the villain showed up knocking at the door, and the hero casually asked if she wanted him to deal with the problem right then and there. Terrified by the man's violent reputation and knowing the building's security would never interfere, she desperately begged him not to open the door. Ignoring her fear, Shantian walked straight over and flung the door open. The rich heir stood there holding another bouquet of flowers and nearly jumped when he saw a stranger standing in front of him. Shantian wasted no time mocking him, asking what kind of weird creature had just shown up. Annoyed by the disrespect, the man tried peeking over Shantian's shoulder and started demanding to know why Senru had been ignoring his calls, casually throwing around overly familiar nicknames. Senru immediately shut him down and demanded some respect. The spoiled heir tried to smooth things over by offering the flowers as an apology, but Shantian cut him off and told him to shut up. Offended, the intruder demanded to know who the kid thought he was. Senru calmly explained that the protagonist was now a special director in her family's company, making his authority official. The heir burst out laughing, mocking the situation, and daring them to try throwing him out. Big mistake. In the blink of an eye, Shantian moved, using overwhelming strength to pin the spoiled rich kid to the ground. Holding the helpless rival down, the hero mocked him, saying he had never seen someone practically beg to get humiliated like this. Completely crushed and shaking in fear, the playboy instantly lost all his swagger and started begging to be let go. Without breaking a sweat, Shantian picked the rich brat up and stuffed him headfirst into the hallway trash bin, joking that it was the perfect place to throw out garbage. Humiliated, the man screamed threats from inside the dumpster, swearing both of them would pay dearly for this humiliation. Shocked by the scene, Zenu nervously asked what exactly had happened to Wen Zhao. Shantian casually shrugged, saying he had followed her advice and simply taken out the trash. He reassured her that as long as she was under his protection, nobody from that level of trash would ever get near her. With the problem handled and a smile finally returning to the girl's face, Shantian changed the subject and suggested introducing her to his sworn brother. Surprised by the connection, she asked if they were really family. The hero explained that while they didn't share blood, their loyalty ran deeper than that. Excited, she happily accepted the invitation, clearly wanting to become part of that trusted circle, while Shantian had already begun seeing her as someone he could truly trust. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing elsewhere. Furious after getting humiliated, the spoiled heir immediately called his thugs, ordering Biao and his crew to move right away. Knowing the rival company was about to launch its new cosmetic product, Snow Lotus Water, the villain decided sabotage was the answer, swearing he would destroy the company's reputation with ruthless cruelty. The scene shifted as Zenu dragged the exhausted hero through a shopping mall. Tired of carrying endless shopping bags, Shantian listened as she explained that updating his wardrobe was mandatory before meeting the family. He had to look the part. Their next stop ended up being the grand opening of the Snow Lotus branch itself, but the second they arrived, Shantian noticed something was off. The massive crowd outside looked like customers at first glance, but he immediately realized it wasn't business, it was chaos. Angry women stood in the middle of the street yelling, showing fake skin damage and claiming the product was toxic and had ruined their faces. The crowd demanded outrageous compensation and immediate payment for medical bills, cornering the overwhelmed manager who was desperately trying to calm everyone down. As the chaos spiraled out of control, one employee urgently called headquarters to report how bad things had gotten. Influencers were already live streaming the situation online, spreading the fake contamination story to destroy the brand's reputation for good. Zenu panicked, unable to understand what was happening since she personally used the cosmetic every day without a single issue. Curious about the so-called side effects on those women, she was quickly calmed down by Shantian. The hero told her to call the authorities immediately while he personally handled the scam. Terrified that the scandal could destroy the brand, the store staff nervously questioned whether the product batch had somehow been contaminated. Shantian confidently reassured them everything was under control before marching straight toward the supposed victims, and demanding they stop causing a scene. Annoyed, the women questioned who he thought he was. He introduced himself as the person responsible for the product and stood firmly behind the formula. One of the scammers pointed at the marks on her face, claiming the damage happened immediately after using it and daring him to fix the problem. Moving with ridiculous speed, Shantian suddenly snatched the accuser's phone. The woman instantly started screaming, accusing him of theft and claiming looking through private files was illegal. Completely unfazed, the protagonist turned the phone screen toward the crowd. Her photo gallery exposed everything. She had been dealing with severe acne for at least 6 months, proving the supposed allergic reaction was fake makeup designed to stage the scam. Cornering her publicly, he gave her 2 choices: confess the setup or suffer public humiliation. That was when a supposed reporter from the morning paper stepped in, accusing the hero of intimidating a victim. Shantian fired back instantly, exposing the guy on the spot by revealing he didn't even have a legitimate press credential and that the entire crowd was nothing but scammers and accomplices. The fake journalist immediately tried flipping the situation, calling Shantian a liar, demanding proof, and threatening a defamation lawsuit. Laughing off the threat, Shantian said they'd have plenty of time to explain themselves at the police station. The police, already tipped off in advance, arrived at the scene and surrounded the group. The officers confirmed they had been tracking that fraud ring for a while and immediately ordered everyone arrested. The hero mocked the criminals, reminding them that their live stream was now solid proof of the scam. The officer leading the operation thanked Shantian for his help, explaining that the group consisted of professional blackmailers who profited from companies' fear of getting their reputations ruined, but that this brave report would finally put an end to the extortion scheme. Shantian's confidence in the brand never wavered, insisting that no cheap setup would ever bring the business down. Relieved, the young woman thanked him for the support, admitting that the hero believed in the company's potential far more than she ever had herself. Across the street, the mastermind behind the scheme watched his henchman being arrested. Grinding his teeth in rage, he crushed his phone in his hand and cursed the failures, swearing this wasn't over yet. Night fell, covering the city under a sky full of stars. The protagonist headed straight to the nightclub building for another appointment. As soon as he walked in, he spotted HN, his sworn sister, sitting with the thief he had met earlier. The girl waved excitedly the moment she saw him crossing the room. During a toast to break the ice, HN asked in a teasing but demanding tone why he always tried so hard to play the good guy. Shantian fired back sarcastically, warning her that her reflexes were getting a little slow and she'd better stay sharp. The businesswoman just laughed, joking that the two of them always threw sparks every time they met. The thief downed another drink and revealed the real reason for the gathering. The venue would soon host an underground competition. HN assured him the event would stay peaceful, but Shantian made it clear he planned to watch from a distance to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. The girl reassured the hero, explaining that her fellow thieves were already on their way and that the competition would focus only on speed and pickpocketing techniques, with no room for fighting. The protagonist found it amusing, realizing that even criminals had their own organized tournaments. Things started picking up in the back of the venue when a new competitor named Taos Shin arrived, confirming she was ready for the challenge. What immediately caught Shantian's attention was a clearly visible circular mark on the woman's arm. Secretly activating his X-vision, he examined it closely. What first looked like a rare gem or a perfectly cut diamond hidden beneath her skin revealed something much darker. Blood was flowing through it normally, proving the object was actually a living and valuable implant. Tao's Shin bragged that she could pick anyone's pocket and walk away with the prize without ever being noticed. Shantian quickly shut down her attitude, warning that a trick like that would get her caught in no time. The thief shrugged, arguing that without bold tricks, nobody survived at the top of that underworld. Suddenly, the protagonist's partner entered the room, casually throwing an arm around the thief's shoulders, just as the countdown for the competition finally started ticking down.